On November 5th, 2024, a comet headed for Earth flew past the satellite. After falling in the capital of country R, the meteorite destroyed the entire island nation, destroying everything. Among the ruins stood a stone in which symbols glowed. Scientists must fly to the island, which is closed to people, to study these stones. A year later, in Haicheng, China, a boy showed a photo of a beautiful girl who was from that country R. She was looking for someone to adopt her, and he asked a friend if he would take one to foster a patriotic spirit. But Ling Luo only looked at his friend, and tears flowed from his eyes. His friend was calling him while the boy was just looking at the girl. He remembered the monsters that were now their reality. One of them had opened its mouth and growled, scaring everyone around. I remembered that the laws of humanity had disappeared and were only weak and strong. He thought of only fighting tiger-level monsters to practice his fighting skills. Before the boy's eyes, he himself stood with a raised sword. But the enemy summoned a monstrous creature that brother Ling Luo had sacrificed himself to protect him. He saw before him how his brother disappeared into the mouth of the beast. He lay there, wounded in the chest and bleeding. Until now he thought that they wanted to escape from the other world with the Ascension Crystal, which under no circumstances should be given to demons. As he was leaving, he asked one of the guys what the current number was, and when he answered that it was November 12th, 2025, he added that young guys like him should not drink so much that even the memory fails. He thought he had been reborn exactly 3 years ago, so he currently has a few more hours before his powers awaken, as it's almost morning now. His boss, who was standing next to him, began to shout that his actions were against the interests of the company, and pointing a finger in his direction, informed Ling Luo of his dismissal. Looking back at the manager, the boy thought that Wang Zhichao only needed an excuse, even the smallest one, to fire him. He remembered that in his past life, the manager was a demon who collected people's organs, limbs, and lives in order to exchange them for increasing his power. Luo didn't think they would meet again. The others followed suit while Chao said that a bastard raised by wolves shouldn't be held in such high regard by Wen Yu. The manager looked very angry. Walking away without a word, Ling Luo recalled that he had then beaten Chao to half-death, and that same day there was a national awakening, which he missed because he was in a boxcar. He walked down the street without even turning around as he thought that after Shun Zhou's release from prison, his own life had become much better. The boy remembered his brother, who was released early because he had awakened in him forces very important for the country. Then, restraining the demon, he asked if Luo was okay. And then Lin Luo accidentally killed a person, and holding the bloody brick with fear, he realized that his powers had also awakened. He then defended the girl who thanked him. Li looked at the sight that appeared in front of him. He could, without using his own powers, take the power of another person's soul through murder. Then he got an E level. Realizing that in his previous life he and his brother had died together, in this one, Luo looked at the artifacts in his hand and thought that for the sake of justice he would appeal to others through the heavens. Smiling maliciously, the boy thought that now he will be the worst of all, and his enemies will become his incentive, and only he will take the throne of the winner. Having received his tasks, he was now smiling, because he knew the secrets of the dungeons near Hangzhou, about worldwide movement and secret passages. This will help him become SSS level as soon as possible. But while he was thinking about taking over the world, someone said that he was cute, making Law roll his eyes in surprise, spying on the office as well. The boy realized that it wasn't him, listening to how Wang Zhichao wanted to push a level D into his circle. After all, they were friends. While the manager was walking and talking on the phone about some girl, Lin Luo was spying on him, thinking that he would get revenge when he got bored of him. Throwing the boa around his neck, Luo said that he was very glad to see the Zhou ruler again as he coughed and sputtered as he struggled to breathe. Lin said that he would be a perfect sacrifice for his regeneration. He changed because he had a special skill. He could summon his double under certain circumstances. And while the hated manager rolled his eyes, Lo said with a smile that unfortunately it was too late to treat. As Zhou died, Ling Luo's power grew stronger as he progressed level by level, while his former boss foamed at the mouth. Seeing the message that his level had reached S, the boy let out a breath and said to himself that he could now open the inventory. Testing his new power, Luo thought that in his past life he and his brother had spent 3 years to reach A level, but this time he had reached S in a few hours. He summoned his doppelganger. Before him stood a huge warrior in armor, and with stones on his helmet, and in several places on his armor. His eyes burned with a violet-purple glow through his head. His counterpart was the Dark Emperor in his own persona, who was an S level and far more durable and skilled than any human. Luo mentioned another who had created a doppelganger, thinking about the S-level inventory limit, which was only 200 points. The other SS-level guy who created a doppelganger already had a different appearance and an inventory limit of 400 points. And the third was SSS level, which gave him the biggest advantage. The inventory limit was as much as 600 points. Turning back to the Dark Emperor, the boy mused that he had very little intelligence, and that he could only control the battle with the power of thought. But with his hands clenched into fists as this S-rank warrior stood behind him, Lin Luo thought that the Dark Emperor was the strongest possible double at this level of strength. But the boy did not worry, because his abilities compensated for the fact that the Emperor could not take by force other doubles in battle. He was also smiling with satisfaction at the Emperor's height, which was the same as most SSS level. Ordering the body to suffocate, Luo watched with a smile as the Dark Emperor tossed Wang Chao's body and carried the dead man away. The boy thought that Chao had turned into a demon in the flesh after the chaos, and that a death in the bathroom would be a worthy death for him as he stared at the Emperor's back. With a smile, standing under the door of the toilet where everything happened, Luo thought that he would definitely not be found in the toilet so quickly, and he felt invincible at this moment. Walking down the street, Law looked at the phone, where his teammates were chatting about the powers that had awakened in them. He could see that everyone was starting to wake up, which was quite unusual. He thought about the fact that Li Ming, who now had S abilities, had teamed up with Feng Meng in his past life, and then the two of them killed many innocents by joining the group. He decided to kill him. Li Min's doppelganger was studying the magic book she was holding, ignoring Li Min sitting next to her. He thought with satisfaction that the guy in the chat called him Dad at last, and that it was very cool that this doppelganger was actually fulfilling his master's wishes. Returning to the prayer lord who was his double, he poked her with his finger and said that he wanted to obtain Fang Men's mind and body completely. Using her power, the Lord of Prayers let go of the book that was levitating nearby. After a few seconds, she told the owner that his wish had come true. He happily texted, ordering me to show up at the hotel because the doppelganger would soon appear, and his girl couldn't miss such a show. He was satisfied, shouting that he was incredible and that he had a lot of power. Addressing his double, he said that while he was here, he could rule the whole world. Calling Li Min, Luo said that he had found the main ability of the S-class doppelganger and said that they needed to meet urgently, asking where it was. Wanting to know more, Ming quickly said the address of the hotel and asked how soon Ling Luo could arrive, and heard that as soon as he could. Clutching the phone in his hand, the boy smiled contentedly, because now he will not only receive Ling Luo's secret, but also the goddess Fang Men, the goddess of his dreams. 5 minutes later, Lo stood at the door of the hotel room and smiled, hearing that Min had a meeting here soon, and he immediately asked what kind of secret it was and what kind of ability Lo had. Leaning down to say everything in his ear so that no one could even hear close, Law was smiling. Li Ming couldn't wait as he listened. At the same time, a double appeared behind him, the Dark Emperor, whose order was already ready and waiting for its time. The next moment, Ming, turning his head towards Lo's doppelganger, received a blow to the jaw from him and was thrown back. With the Dark Emperor nearby watching the situation in the room, Ming sat by the wall and waited while Luo walked over to him and chose exactly what he wanted to take with the robbery skill. The guy thought. Ming was an ordinary person and had nothing until his abilities were awakened. His inventory is small, and soul power will not help, so he chose abilities. Ling Luo thought with satisfaction that the Book of Wishes was a very useful ability, because it helped both in attack and defense, and also brought luck to the owner. He summoned his other doppelganger, the Lord of Prayers, now shining brightly in his robes and with a Book of Wishes in his hand. Lo read what skills the Lord possessed and ordered to obey him. Lin Luo looked at his doppelganger before him with a smile. The guy asked why they could communicate with each other. The doppelganger replied that he was a special doppelganger, not like most of the doppelgangers that people have. And he said that he can make any wish because he is the owner of wishes. But he warned that small desires require little energy. Larger ones require a lot of energy, and if they are too many and often, then it can kill him altogether. And he also said that he is smarter than others, so he can also give advice. Ling Luo looked at the doppelganger in surprise, wondering why he didn't ask where the treasure was instead of asking him to give it to him. That would be a small wish, and Law could handle it himself. The doppelganger also told what exactly takes more energy, and that using the Book of Wishes in relation to another person depends on their willpower. Becoming more serious about the topic, Law asked the owner what would happen to him if he freed his brother from the attention of the police. Studying the book carefully, the owner said that it was very difficult, and he would not even be able to speak for a while, especially since the process may drag on and Brother Lo will not be released right away. With a smile, Luo said that he thought the most logical and easy thing to do in such a situation would be to ask about the capabilities of the S-Class. But the next moment, the Dark Lord returned, making Luo smile with satisfaction as he got rid of his body very quickly. On the Dark Lord's chest was a clock, the hands of which showed exactly 12 and did not move, which made the boy think about it. He asked the owner of wishes about whether the image of the double was connected with the master, to which he received an affirmative answer. The owner said that the doppelgangers are connected with the power of the owner's soul and his abilities. Ling Luo was visibly thinking because the Dark Lord did not have any abilities related to time, and this appeared when Luo was reborn. Deciding to figure it out later, he left his hotel room, determined to explore all the dungeons and secret areas. At the same time, Feng Meng was thinking, looking at her messages, why she hates Li Min, but still comes here and wished that he would be banned as soon as possible, because he is disgusting. Approaching the reception, the boy asked the girl to extend number 414 for another week, and because his friend does not like to be disturbed, there is no need to clean up there. Yu Taijie unhappily asked why his time travel had been postponed to other dates, looking at his interlocutor. The time mistress said that on the way home in her journey, an unknown entity took some of her power, and because of this, the time-space was distorted. The man was visibly displeased by this, gritting his teeth and angrily thinking that after paying a lot of money, he still got into a fight. It was Yu Taijie who was SS class level and had discovered the ability to travel through time when he was reincarnated the last time. And thanks to his abilities, he killed one of the gods to move to another dimension. But there was a person from the same clan who did not speak, but then defeated him, easily dismissing both him and his helper double. He then forced the girl to use all of her energy from 4,000 to 40, and because she obeyed then, following his order, she fell into a time loop. Now he remembered unhappily that he had wanted to return several weeks before the general awakening, but had returned several hours later. And the mistress of time is no longer white as the king of time. The doppelganger said that she seemed to sense the power of the Time King, and it was from one of the Hangzhou residents. He wondered if she was sure, and how her ability was transferred to someone else. She said she thought it was the man from the trip, but asked if the owner really wanted to find him, while the girl was trying to convince Tai Jie not to go in, because the boy was strong and the master had problems with close combat. He asked if she was sure that the stranger was from the illogical clan. The girl began to push, telling him to believe her because she definitely feels that her abilities are now in some other person. Yu Taijie suggested that the Time Lord return to the dungeon and find his former teammates. The security guard near the dungeon told people to pass with special care and recommended to break into groups of 5 people. The boys were very happy because they liked the dungeon. One of them said that a new era had come for them and that it resembled a map of the planet. But the boys negotiated who would go first. Another asked if they really wanted to make him cannon fodder by sending him first. But here, some were looking in surprise at the boy who seemed to dare to enter the dungeon first. It was Lin Luo, who was walking closer and closer to the entrance. Everyone looked after him, asking each other why he went alone, because only teams are allowed into the dungeon. At times, Lo walked further and further into the portal. Putting his hands into the portal, the boy remembered that in his past life he was always afraid to go there. Lin Luo was determined to go to the dungeon, thinking that this time things would be different and he would not be afraid. Lin Luo waited until the system notified that his body was currently in the copying process, and also about the fact that his health will be restored as soon as he comes out, and if he dies 3 times, he will not be reborn again. The boy thought about which ability to choose, remembering that in his past life he had chosen a warrior who was about level 20. But now he had an S-class, and it helped him choose a different role. With a wave of Luo's hand, the Wish Lord appeared and asked if he could recommend which ability to choose to have the best chance. The doppelganger, after thinking for a while, replied that he advises choosing the mage ability. After level 20, you can become a seer, and with the help of the Dark Lord, you can defeat the enemy's weaknesses in close combat. Thinking about the benefits of S level, it also occurred to the boy that the Dark Emperor had his own useful purposes. He asked the Wisher what level he would go to if he chose mage and robbery in his inventory. But he said that he does not recommend this equipment because it weakens the abilities of the mage. But the boy thought that the Lord's advice was good, but his main ability was based on robbery, and everything was connected to the Dark Emperor. He thought that choosing the killer would be better. Thoughtfully, he fixed his gaze on the Lord, asking what his profession would be after level 2 if he chose assassin. With a chuckle, he said that the outlaw would go well with the heist, but still recommended taking the mage because it was the easiest. Determined to have his way, the boy pressed the button on the system that selects the killer and apologized to the Wish Lord. He went to dungeons while his stat bar was being updated. He felt the changes that were taking place. Lin Luo's eyes widened in surprise as he realized that his body was going through all the changes that appeared on his stat panel. A short knife appeared in his hand, which was his starting weapon and had 6 to attack, which was not so much. Swinging his blade, the boy thought with satisfaction that he had done the right thing, as the Slayer was a good match for the power of the Dark Emperor who served him. Having chosen one person to pass, the boy thought with pleasure about the power of the Dark Emperor, which was the level of a player of level 20 or 30. And if you pass alone, you get additional rewards. Lin Luo chose the most difficult level of the dungeon. Although the system recommended choosing a lower level because of his first level, he confidently chose the most difficult. The goblin dungeon was teeming with the same goblins standing and watching seemingly without end. Before them appeared Ling Luo, who was alone and looked at the numerous army of goblins. His opponent was a level 5 goblin clutching a spiked club and waiting to strike. Lin Luo raised his hand, his fingers pulsed with the power he was about to use. The Dark Emperor he summoned appeared nearby, as well as the power of the 100 battles, the frequency of which was increased by 20%. Calling the Emperor, who had already clenched his fist around which his power revolved, the boy pointed his finger at the goblins and ordered them all to be destroyed. After slaying the red-eyed goblin that the Emperor had killed in one blow, the Emperor stood and looked at the others as Law studied the rewards he had received. The Dark Lord used many fists to beat the goblins one by one, looking only straight ahead. The goblins flew one after the other from the blows. Each Emperor inflicted deadly damage. He and the Dark Emperor stood in a dungeon, where they killed 15 goblins and received skill upgrades and experience points. Lin Luo was satisfied, smiling as he saw the congratulations for reaching level 6 and the amount of experience to earn for the next level. The boy understood that the ability Robbery can only be used 7 times, and he didn't want to waste it on small goblins, so he decided to look at his inventory. He thought that poisons can be added to the killer's weapons, and he also needs agility, so he needs to add speed to pump agility. He chose 16 in dexterity, 4 in strength, and another 10 in dexterity strength, referring to the system when he came up with his strategy. He thought as he walked on with the Emperor behind him that dexterity didn't reduce the cost of dexterity by 40%, like Shadow Hunt and Phantom Strike. He remembered a past life where people fought before the dungeon began, and used most of their strength before it began, without building a strategy to save agility and abilities. Moving on, the Dark Emperor scattered the 6th-level goblins everywhere, using his power and wrapping himself in shadow in some places. Lin Luo watched everything, realizing that the goblins were getting stronger and stronger, one in a 6th-level wolfskin, another even 7th level, and another even 8th level throwing stones. He walked further into the cave thinking that he could handle everything because he had also raised his level all the way to 7. The boy was smiling with satisfaction because the line finally reached the dungeon with the boss he was waiting for. The goblins were holding hostage 2 girls who were calling for help. The monsters held them tightly, preventing them from escaping, and one goblin tried to take off his shirt. The boy saw the 3 goblins but regretted that their abilities were very different from the Dark Emperor's. One of the goblins, swinging his club, ran at Law, ordering him to run as fast as he could. Using his powers, the boy looked at the goblins with disgust. Although they were only NPC characters, they still annoyed him a lot. The Dark Emperor, having received the order to destroy the goblins, swung a huge fist that sparkled with the power of his abilities. The next moment after the blow, the goblin flew away from the force. The Emperor hit him with a scythe. The goblins used their skills and powers to create a power attack that took the shape of a skull and came at Lo. The goblins watched as their fellows disappeared in a huge cloud of dust that the boy and the Dark Emperor had raised. As the majority lay around and didn't move, Lin Luo pointed his finger at the only one left and told him that he was alone and that he should run fast if he wanted to live. The Dark Emperor and the Red Goblin looked at each other, calculating their own attacks. The goblin fell to the ground, slamming into her, from a single blow from Lo's doppelganger. Standing over the goblin, the boy said that he was so weak, but he had to die anyway, because goblins are good when they're dead. As soon as the goblin died, the boy gained experience and skills, rising to level 9, and now sat contentedly waiting while his treasure chest was created, and his success increased 10 times. He smiled as he looked at the message that preceded his gold chest, which detailed what he got for completing the entire dungeon with no harm to himself and with minimal level. As he opened his gold chest, Luo thought that it was so simple and easy to get the gold thanks to the Wish Lord. He looked contentedly at the inventory that was in the chest: coins, items, iron items, rare items, and skills that a mage and a warrior would need. Yu Tai Jie asked the Time Mistress if she was sure that time travel does not change the course of time, glaring at her. She said that it allows you to return to your body and nothing else. He pondered, saying that the first assumption was that the Emperor took the power to go through the dungeons in this world, and the second was that the Emperor from the future took the power to move to the present and complete the mission. The girl did not understand why, because her power does not give an improvement in abilities, and then why should he have her skills? Tai Jie said that he himself could not understand it, still pondering. But he immediately became more serious, saying that they must find the Emperor in any case, because he did not like having something taken from him. Meanwhile, Ling Luo stared in amazement at the lottery golden ticket. 10 scrolls, because in his past life he had been lucky for 3 years, and still only received 5 scrolls in all that time. Closing his eyes, he called out to the Lord of Prayers, saying that now it was his turn to choose and make history. The master appeared with a staff and a prayer book in hand, saying that he was pleased to serve his master. The guy asked for help to win as much and better as possible in the lottery. The Lord congratulated him, mentioning that such chests can only be won in 2 dungeons, Hell and Babylon. He continued that in Wheel of Fortune you can win inventory items from F to SSS, and some of them even in dungeons are impossible to find so rare. The owner of wishes said that everything depends on the fortune of the one who spins the wheel, because the chances of falling out of certain objects vary, and it is impossible to guess. Lin Luo didn't want to understand that he might not be able to hold an S-level or higher item, so he poked his finger at the doppelganger and asked why not use his power and give him luck. After hearing about sleeping for 6 months, he thought that he should just choose the S-level, because his doppelganger's sleep would affect his own power and other people as well. He asked what would happen if 2 S-level items were spelled, and hearing the answer that it was 110 units of energy, said that there should be at least 1 item of the required level. The Wishmaster began to use his power, saying that the master's wish would come true as he looked into his book. At the same second, Lin Luo threw a lottery ticket, using the Wheel of Fortune and causing the system to start the lottery. Law was visibly pleased with what he had won in the lottery, as he could pump his doppelgangers and increase their spawn distance without his physical presence. Holding the extreme crystal in his hands, the boy regretted that there was only 1 SS-level item, even though it was not bad. He clenched the crystals in his hand, reading the system's prompts that recommended using the crystals now and getting something. However, returning to the Dark Emperor, he gave the crystals to him, telling his doppelganger that they were rightfully his, and he had earned them in battle. He crushed both crystals in his hands almost immediately, releasing the skill-enhancing energy that had been enchanted within them. Taking the crystal of energy, he asked the owner of wishes, to whom it is better to give these two crystals, which he looked at with an unblinking gaze. He looked like a madman, drooling even a little as he looked at the crystals and told the master to give them to him so he wouldn't have to worry about his energy issues. The Wish Lord was confused for a couple of seconds when Lin Luo actually gave him both crystals, telling him to take them for himself in that case. The doppelganger crushed the crystals in his hand, releasing their power and absorbing it into himself, improving his energy readings. He thought in surprise and a little confusion that he wouldn't be able to take everything he was used to if he didn't have the space crystal, and the inventory had only improved by 4%, which wasn't much. Lin Luo firmly thought that in order to get him, he only had to go forward. While the others were coming out of the dungeon and saying that there was no need to go there, the boy was walking towards the dungeon, thinking that he had to level up and that he had more power than the others even now. Luo was looking at the entrance of the dungeon with a smile, thinking that it was time to go to Babylon to level up because there were endless levels. While the others were discussing the Tower of Babel, Luo thought that every 10 levels gave a Wheel of Fortune ticket, and he had to try really hard this time to get as many as possible. A pretty girl appeared next to him, winked at him, and asked Lin Luo if he wanted to team up with her. The girl opened her mouth in surprise when the boy simply walked past her and did not pay the usual attention, thinking that the team would only disturb him. As soon as they entered the dungeon, the Dark Emperor immediately went to work, scattering everyone to the sides as Lin Luo ordered him to. After passing the first floor in 20 seconds, Luo was climbing to the second, while the system announced that the Dark Emperor's name was popular all over the world. On the second floor, the boy with a smile told the dogs of this level to attack, and asked if they were waiting for him. Everyone who saw the Dark Emperor's stats wondered who he was, because he was leveling so fast and winning all by himself. Lin Luo, meanwhile, made his way up to the 10th floor, carefully opening the door so as not to be taken by surprise. The boy remembered that the first person to pass the 10th floor in his past life was Juju, and since he has already gone through such a path, he is obliged to go at least to the 12th level. The dog-headed Lord Ilfin, whose eyes glowed green, appeared before him with a roar and a sword. The dog swung and slashed as hard as it could with its sword, causing the boy to flinch. Vig understood that the combination of the opponent's abilities was not the best solution for himself. The Dark Emperor who was nearby rushed into battle, gathering purple light and dark shadows around him. He brought his fist up for a melee attack. The next moment, the dog flew away from the Dark Emperor, snarling and throwing its arms out to its sides. Lord Ilfin swung, attacking Lo's doppelganger, using some of his red light power. But after a few seconds, the floor boss was lying face down under Lin Luo's feet, who was simply watching what was happening. The boy was seriously looking at the message of the system, which said that he had become the first player in the world to pass the 10th floor of the Tower of Babel by himself, and receive 10 lottery tickets. The people standing near the dungeon saw the system's message about the exploits of the Dark Emperor, and they were jealous and couldn't believe it until the end, because he was alone and went through everything so quickly. Reading the inscription on the stone about tribulation-level disasters, the girl adjusted her glasses and said that she was afraid that they should prepare for the worst, because soon the world would be engulfed in chaos. Meanwhile, Lin Luo was looking at the lottery and thought that he might win something valuable with the power of the Prayer Master. The boy couldn't believe that, among other things, the cosmic crystal fell out, because with its help you could return to the real world, and it was an S-class inventory. Crushing the 2 crystals in his hands, he thought that the cosmic crystal might be 7% more valuable than the others because the others act directly. The boy took 2 magic crystals for himself and gave 2 crystals of life to the Dark Emperor, who was now looking at them and listening to what the master was saying. Luo continued to look through his inventory, seeing that he had 2 more Wheel of Fortune tickets and 275 fortune shards. He decided to collect 10 tickets again, because it would be more profitable that way. The guy looked at his equipment, realizing that he had to sell it as soon as possible because it would cost more. But after a few seconds he opened his mouth in surprise because what he put up for sale was bought in a second, and he received 5 million in real money. But now he was unhappy because he underestimated the rich and had to sell items one by one in order to bargain more. He thought that he would have to stay here all night to reach level 20, and then when he exited the game, he could get the S-level item. Lin Luo mentioned the 3 clans that emerged after the Chaos Era and were infamous. One of the leaders of the Clan of 8, Bin Hong Li, according to Luo, who represented him in front of him, did not even carry an umbrella in the rain, but a knife. And among the 12 guardians of the Great Tomb, Ziwan Ying, the Blood Witch, and Liu Jiangying, the Ice Rage, made a huge contribution to the protection and development of the clan. And the leaders of the Smiling Tomb, Zhou Yu, Hu Jin Ming, and Guo Tao, also contributed a great deal to the development, and all these leaders are masters who have awakened S-level abilities. Lin Luo smiled in satisfaction, thinking that once he defeated them he would be able to go straight to Sin City. Sin, who was in charge of the Sneaking Tiger Villa, sat and stared at the monitor. He complained to himself that it was no longer so profitable to send people to work according to the previous scheme. But the boy thought that now that he had registered his company officially, it would be easier for him to cut loot, as he was used to. He was smiling a little crazy, because he came up with a scheme to recruit people, give them work for a while, and then force them to join teams. He considered himself a genius. Looking at the message on the phone, Sin was smiling, because another fool pecked at the offer, and now he will be able to close the network, and the boss will definitely praise him. The first on the 11th floor of the Tower of Babel were skeletons. The system quickly provided data on them, saying that passive skills are a rusty sword that damages the player even after combat. Law looked at his twin's back, thinking that from the 11th floor you can get some equipment, and at 10 levels before that only destiny fragments. In his past life he often visited here with his brother. He ordered the Dark Emperor to attack and leave no one behind. After the Dark Emperor's two-handed attack, all the skeletons were blown away by his power and attack speed. And on the skeleton of the horse sat a 17th level skeleton general who had already noticed the Dark Emperor and was attacking him. Ling Luo hit the skeleton general with a full swing, before asking if he was looking down on him since he was only level 13. He even turned from the force of the blow to the jaw. After passing through and receiving 85 fate shards, the boy smiled and thought that he had 3 years to hone his skills. 8 minutes later, on the 20th floor, there was a skeleton lord blocking the way up. He looked very scary and looked directly at Lo. The skeleton lord had summoning from hell skills among other things. Raising his sword, he shouted, urging his brothers and subordinates to leave hell and fight for him in this battle. All of the skeletons he had summoned began to climb out and appear on the floor, one by one, each passing by Lin Luo and his doppelganger, trying to get there as quickly as possible. Taking out his blade, the boy thought that there were more than 200 skeleton warriors, and the level was much more difficult than the other 19. The attack began, and all the skeletons moved towards the boy, and the one on the horse skeleton ran, drawing a sword from its sheath. The Dark Emperor began to repel the attack, resolutely and using all the strength he had, and gained as they made their way up to the floor. While the doppelganger dealt with the higher-ranked skeletons, Lin Luo stood in the middle of a circle of ordinary skeleton warriors, clutching the hilt of his blade. Gritting his teeth as he realized that his strength might not be enough and he might get seriously injured, he held the blade out in front of him. The Lord of Prayers, summoned by him, appeared immediately after the summons, holding in his hands a staff and a book of wishes and prayers. Lin Luo shouted, making a wish for the Dark Emperor to attack and deal double health damage to his opponents. He ordered strikes until the skeleton lord was defeated. The Lord of Prayers began to cast spells, using his book and scattering the glow of his own power around him. He announced that the master's wish was fulfilled. Lin Luo couldn't believe that he could actually make such a wish. Meanwhile, the Dark Emperor spread his arms out to his sides, feeling the surge of power bestowed upon him by the Lord of Prayers and Wishes. The skeleton lord lowered his sword in surprise, not understanding what was happening. The Lord of Prayer opened his mouth at what was happening, and Luo began swinging his blade, ordering the Dark Emperor to advance and assuring him that he would take care of himself. The doppelganger began attacking the skeleton, thrusting in with its attack and forcing it to defend against the double attack. The skeleton lord looked at the pile of dust that had been raised when he pushed the Dark Emperor away, and said that this is what happens to those who cross his path. Lin Luo visibly tensed when he saw this, calling out to the Dark Emperor and staring intently into the dust in front of him. The next moment, the Dark Emperor appeared again and attacked again, putting the maximum of his own power into his blow. The boy smiled contentedly, saying that he knew that everything was fine with the Emperor and that he had not disappeared. The skeleton lord lost health hit after hit, always spending minus 580 points when he missed the Dark Emperor's attacks. He was already lying on the floor. As the Dark Lord combined his maximum attacks, Lin Luo swung his wedge and confidently walked forward, thinking that he had found an effective way to make a wish. The boy placed a hand on the Dark Emperor's shoulder, telling him to leave everything. They had already reached level 14 and the skeleton lord was dead. People watching the news said that it was too much and that he had walked up to 20 floors by himself, but someone started telling him to get off his feet because he must have been beaten half to death by now. The next floor was the 21st floor, and the Dark Emperor quickly and evenly defeated the boss of this level. The Dark Emperor had already passed even the 25th floor, waiting for a new opponent, while Lin Luo led him through the maze of 21, 30 floors with decoys to make it faster. They passed the 29th floor. They were standing in front of the door of the 30th floor together. The system notified that they did not reach the required level to defeat the boss, so it recommended that they come next time. As the Dark Emperor resolutely walked towards the door of the next level, Ling Luo smugly told the system not to give him any more advice. In front of them was a level 30 monster, a Minotaur king who was already waiting for their appearance. As the two of them looked at the boss, the boy thought about waiting to meet the level boss and finally be able to use his looting skills. The Minotaur looked down at the boy, laughing at his level 15, and asked if he had any idea what awaited him here. With a smile, he asked if he really understood correctly that the Minotaur's labyrinth was a real trap. The monster looked at the boy in surprise, not understanding what was happening. Still smiling, the boy said he was ready to fight the Minotaur, summoning the Dark Emperor. The doppelganger's hand appeared from behind Luo's back, reaching for the monster. The Minotaur swung sharply, taking his weapon in both hands to put the maximum of his power into the strike. The Dark Emperor flew straight at the sledgehammer that the Minotaur was swinging at him. While the doppelganger attacked the Minotaur, fighting to pass the levels, Ling Luo thought about the fact that it is not necessary to pass from the 21st to the 29th floor quickly, because everyone will be reborn and come at the Emperor's call. The Minotaur brought the sledgehammer down on the floor, which cracked from the force with which he struck. Bright sparks of his power flew in different directions. The boy watched what was happening, thinking with a smile that many have fallen into this trap, but he has his own plan that he built on his past failures. The Master of Desires appeared after being summoned and asked about the commission. Lin Luo ordered to help him, and the Dark Emperor dealt damage with double the power. As soon as the Dark Emperor's fist touched the Minotaur's muzzle, hitting the target directly, the Wish Lord said that the Master's wish would be granted. The king received a small amount of damage, but it was already doubled. The Emperor struck simultaneously, one after the other, without stopping for a second. When his nose was already bleeding, the Minotaur realized that everything was not as easy as he thought. He began to call the soldiers to revive and come to his aid. As soon as Ling Luo noticed that the floor boss had launched an attack, he stretched out his hand, releasing his own power and keeping his unblinking gaze on his opponent. He ordered the Emperor to begin the plan. Having activated most of the skills that took away health and agility, he now stood on top of the Minotaur's body, looking down at his defeated foe. Ling Luo looked quite insane, his eyes wide as he stared at his own hand sparkling with power. He said it was an incredible feeling without referring to anyone in particular. Having reached level 18, the boy displeasedly turned his head in the direction of the door, from which monsters summoned by the Minotaur poured out, shouting death wishes. Raising his hand with strength at the tip of his finger, the boy said, calling his warriors to do as he commanded. He ordered to retreat. The hypnotized Minotaurs left their sledgehammers, glaring at their new master. All the warriors summoned from hell knelt and bowed their heads before the new lord. At the same time, in the secret Mushroom Kingdom, which was a beginner's dungeon, one guy shouted using a force that would make them kneel down. The level 8 Mushroom King was on his knees, staring at the one who had bent him to his will. Jie was standing in the dungeon saying that he had finally found someone of his level and saying that he had heard a lot about the Teruo couple. Glancing at the stranger, Teruo asked who he was and why he was not afraid of his Emperor's Eye ability. Getting closer, Jie introduced himself, saying that he lived beyond time and was the very person who could make him stronger. Ruo was visibly surprised, questioning the phrase "man out of time" as he stared at the outstretched hand facing him, palm up. Taking the boy's hand, Jie said that he needed help, answering the question of why he had come to Master Ruo, and also because he can bring any monster to his knees. Meanwhile, the Minotaurs from hell, now under Ling Luo's control, bid farewell to their king in unison. Satisfied that the plan had worked, Luo smiled and called for the Dark Emperor to come out and act according to the plan. As soon as the doppelganger reappeared, he was immediately ordered to go forward, which he did. After a second, everything around was flooded with the light of the power of the Dark Emperor, who was mowing down the Minotaurs one by one. Law coughed, muttering to himself that there was an incredible amount of dust around here. As the boy walked past the people, they were chatting in disbelief that the Dark Emperor had reached level 30 on his own and raised his level to 22. Luo smiled contentedly. He thought that now he could reach a completely different level of abilities and levels of his own. Lin Luo was eating noodles on both cheeks while sitting in one of the restaurants in the city. He thought that the second-level dungeons would be more difficult, and the experience of the past life could not be used, so it was necessary to eat well. Luo looked back at the sound of the girl's voice, seeing a picture of some guy waving his hand at the girl, visibly displeased with something. The girl was sitting on the floor and fearfully looked at the trio of boys, who confidently pressed on her, coming closer and closer. He remembered how his colleagues talked about his brother being a thief and joked that Ling Luo himself would steal from them if their desks were next to his. The girl, whose cheek was burning from the blow, folded her hands in a prayer gesture and begged for forgiveness, saying that she did not know and did not want such a thing. But the man said that there was no point in asking for forgiveness, because she had ruined everything and had kicked her in the face. Lo, while eating in silence, glanced at the girl, thinking that most likely she was already dead. While one of the boys asked to bring them more noodles, the leader of their gang told them to pull the girl to him, so that she would continue treating his wounds. The third shouted at the beaten girl, telling her not to pretend to be dead because everything is fine with her, and quickly went to the owner. He kicked the girl on the body to make her stand up faster, but she said that he had not done this to her before, when the captain was here. He jabbed a finger at her bruised face and asked if she really still thought of herself as a leader and where she was now. The man, taking the girl by the t-shirt, dragged her along the floor behind him, saying with a smile that she used to be the captain's dog, but now she was their dog. As he chewed and tried to ignore the scene next to him, Luo thought that everyone used to be on good terms. But the world has changed a lot, and so have the relationships between former friends. Sitting at the table, they discussed the need to take another player to the team, because they still had to complete the second level of the Tower of Babel. Next to their head sat a battered girl using her power that glowed green as she continued to heal her master. The man said with a smile that they had not seen each other for a long time, holding his plate of soup. He called out to Ling Luo as he stepped closer. The girl asked again, not believing what she heard, was it really Lin Luo there? While he was eating, an ex-colleague put his hand on Lo's shoulder and asked him where he had been since everyone was reborn and that he missed him a lot. It turned out that it was not soup but seafood, which the man put in front of the boy and told him to eat as much as possible and not to sigh so heavily. He asked in a whisper what ability the colleague had awakened and promised a lot of money. After all, who but Luo is worthy of Wen Yuchun's team? When he beat the captain in his past life, he was contacted by Zhan Wen and offered to work together, and the boy told about his F-level robbery talent. Then all those people laughed at him, and the fact that even his talent is related to robbery, and the girl then generally said that he should be taught now. Lin Luo got up from his seat and left, but turned his head to his former colleague and said that he was not looking for a team. But he only laughed, calling Luo a poor boy and asking if he really wanted to become as legendary as the Dark Emperor. The boy walked away, barely keeping himself from answering something superfluous. But the girl rushed to him, shouting for him to wait. Falling to her knees and grasping his leg, she sobbed, begging Brother Luo to save her. The girl said that she would allow him anything, if only he would save her. The girl took his hand, and with hope in her eyes and blushing a little, placed his hand with the palm of her hand on her breast. She called him again, calling him brother and telling him to take her with him. Lin Luo jerked his hand away, clenching it into a fist with emotion, and said that the girl had confused something and he was definitely not looking for a partner. Wen Yu-chun, who was displeased and insulted the girl, was already hurrying to them, saying that she was trying to seduce everyone she saw and that she didn't really need Ling Luo. Wen grabbed the girl by her hair and she screamed. He asked if she thought Lo had enough strength to save her. The other two began to taunt Ling Luo, discussing how the girl thought he had a high level, but they were sure he was lower than them. While hurting the girl, Wen Yu-chun said that he would have stolen something from the Wen family if he had known about their kindness to the two robbers, and that he and Wen Yu-chi were made for each other. Ling Luo looked at his former colleagues with displeasure, saying that he advised them not to say those three words. Chen looked at his ex-colleague with a sly smile, still clutching the girl's hair and asking what the three words were. Stepping closer and whispering, he asked with a smile if it was Alphonse and Wen Yu. He called him a scumbag who knows he can't jump higher than his head. Leaving Ling Luo behind, Chen jabbed his finger at him as he walked towards his colleagues, telling them that the boy didn't understand that times had already changed and offered to show the world of fists. They were visibly pleased with the offer, pumping their fists, and one even wanted to try out the items from the dungeon he had just obtained. Rushing towards the guy with the power that sparkled on his fist, one of the ex-colleagues told him not to think that the inspector would save him from a fight, and if he doesn't want to die, he should get down on his knees and ask nicely. But both men's fists failed to reach the target. Lin Luo put his arms out to the sides, hitting both ex-colleagues in the face and sending them flying several meters away. While the girl's mouth opened in surprise, Law thought about the fact that he had lived 2 lives and knew better than them what the world of fists was. He squinted at those lying on the floor. Chen was visibly irritated and angry, asking if 2 strong players really couldn't beat that suffocator. Taking out his blade, he angrily rushed at Law, shouting for him to die quickly. The boy effortlessly swerved to the side, not allowing himself to be cut. And then, with a smile, he delivered several blows to Chen Yu, who visibly winced in pain and did not expect such a force. Lin Luo looked at the bunch of losers in front of him, but thought only that they were just a bunch of weaklings, and he didn't even want to get his hands dirty with them. Both boys fell to their knees, folding their hands in prayer and addressing Lo as their master. They offered themselves as teammates, saying they were ready to do all the work. Looking them up and down, the boy repeated that he didn't need the team, but emphasized that they still clearly didn't believe him. They began to apologize for what they had done, and one of them even beat his forehead, bending as low as possible just to beg for forgiveness and life. A man with a cup of hot drink watched through the blinds gathered under his fingers and thought that he could not believe that such a strong person worked in such a place. Returning to his guards, he ordered to find an intelligent person to look after the boy. It was Bin Hong Li, one of the leaders of the 8 clan. The boys were kneeling again, saying that they already understood when Luo told them that they should be in position when Zhang Wei woke up. They were praying that they understood. When he passed by the girl, she thought in amazement that he was an incredible man, and that it was a great luck to meet such a strong man. They grabbed his pants, saying that she used to be rude, but her boss forced her. She said that she knew that he did not hold a grudge against her. Law was visibly irritated by her, telling her to calm down. Putting his hand to her face, she told him to take her with him and that she would make up for her fault tenfold. She couldn't believe that he refused her, even with her mouth open in surprise. The girl heard Lin Luo tell her to behave normally. Left behind, she clenched her fist at the thought of Lin's scumbag leaving again. Both boys began to taunt her, asking if she really thought she could seduce anyone and that she didn't need to take any chances because their captain Lin had only one woman in his heart. Beaten and abandoned, the girl cried out, asking how she was worse than this Wen Yu. They began to laugh loudly and violently, saying that the girl was not worthy of Miss Wen Yu's finger and that the girl was inferior. When she told them to do it again, finding the strength to get back on their feet, the boys said that Lin Luo was gone and that no one would protect her now. One of the boys thought that Law had hit him so hard that he had lost his strength, while the other was sure of his victory over the girl. Noticing this, the girl smiled and thought that this would be her perfect chance for revenge. At the cry of another guy, the girl hit one of them in the face, saying that she would return all his kindness 100-fold. She asked him where he got the strength to resist and whether he wanted to die, while she slapped his face again and again. One of the Clan 8 leaders watched with a smile, telling himself that the girl was quite unusual. Another man said that the girl was incredibly beautiful, and Bai Hong Li asked if he should invite her to join them because the brothers were complaining about the lack of female players on the team. Sipping his drink, he calmly told her to ask him about that boy as well and find out as much information as possible. He wanted to find his weak spot. Stepping on her abuser, the girl smiled. She told Ling Luo, even though he didn't hear her, that one day she would step on him the same way. Interrupting her, the man apologized for interrupting and asked if she had heard of the Clan of 8. She asked if this was not the most famous team of players. He said they were looking for active players and offered to join them. The girl joyfully folded her hands, saying that this is what she dreamed of. With a satisfied smile, she thought that Ling Luo would know by now that she was in a cool guild and that this was the difference between rich and poor. He told Qin Xiaomei that from now on they were family, placing his hand over his heart as a sign of respect and brotherhood. And then he asked who the boy who had just left was, because he had treated her so rudely. She started talking about how he likes to manipulate people's feelings and that he was on a team with her. She squinted in interest when she heard the question about weaknesses and how they might get revenge on her. Xiao Mei did not think long. She said that his weak point is a woman and her name is Wen Yu Chen. While the boy was on his way, he was followed by an unknown person, telling someone that Ling Luo was going to the eastern part of the city. He was ordered to continue and not to lose the boy under any circumstances. While Lin Luo was on his way, his pursuer was talking on the phone and taunting the girl that the boss of the 8 clan had brought down to their lair, saying that the boss knew what the brothers needed. Without pretending to notice the pursuit, Lin Luo thought that the boy needed it if he was following him. The guy on the phone was instructed by talking about Ling Luo's weak spot, and then told to draw the guy's attention to someone named Wen Yu Qi. Turning back, Ling Luo tried to see if he was being followed by the stranger who had been following him when he entered an alley. Seeing him in front of him, Law smiled, wondering who was so brave standing in his way. Passing by the stranger, who was a little frightened, Luo thought that he knew him, and whether they had met before. The pursuer was moving on when the Dark Emperor appeared in front of him, forcing him to switch all attention to himself, and the very next moment he was flying back from a blow that hit him right in the jaw. When he fell to the ground, Lin Luo was already standing over him with the Dark Emperor at his back, asking who had sent him to follow him. Picking up his forehead, Luo heard that the boy was just walking by, but said that he was following him from the noodle shop, so it definitely didn't count as him walking by. Looking closely at the earring in his ear, the boy couldn't believe that this beaten wretch was from the Clan of 8. He thought about his past life, thinking that the 8 clan shouldn't have appeared before him so early. He expected them later. Taking the beaten man by the face, Lin said that he had one last chance to tell everything, but he stood his ground and said that he was just passing by and did not even know who he was. The boy thought that in front of him, most likely, Dead Man, was the lowest level, and there was no point in asking him about anything. Ling Luo summoned the Lord of Prayers, who appeared immediately behind him. The boy voiced his wish that the boy would tell him the true purpose of his persecution. He began to tell that he was serving under General Park Hong Yol of the Clan of 8, and that they had one beauty who told him about Lin Luo's best player. And then he explained that his next task was to find someone named Wen Yu Qi. Ling Luo pondered, wondering if the 8 clan had actually taken Qin Xiaomei in. And after that, he said that his master wanted to blackmail Ling Luo with the help of Wen Yu Qi so that he would become a dead warrior of their clan. He thought that Xiaomei was a lecherous whore, and that she really caused him more trouble than he expected from her. He recalled that in his past life, after Sister Wen's death, he was in constant danger to pump up his abilities and be able to fast Hong Li. Looking back at the boy who was currently being beaten by the Dark Emperor, the boy thought that in his past life, he should have killed Bai Hong Li before the 8 clan got to Sister Wen. Glancing at the Dark Emperor, who had already thrown the body over his shoulder, Luo threatened to dispose of the body. And while he was carrying out the order, the boy turned to the Wish Lord and asked how long it would take for the wish to be granted if he wished that the clan of 8 would not attack Wen Yu Qi. Thinking after his doppelganger's answer, Ling Luo understood that 24 hours was enough for a wish to come true, so he said that was enough. The Master of Prayers heard the order to fulfill the wish and immediately said that it would come true. Walking ahead of their group, Lin Luo thought with a smile that he had to go to the second part of the secret world first. He stood in the secret world of the League of Assassins and thought to himself that he was very surprised at how quiet it was. Desmond Miles, the second-level assassin mentor, said with a smile that he could feel the power inside the boy and asked if he was ready to explore the high-level secrets. Thinking that it was a familiar NPC character, Luo bowed and said afterwards that he would approach his mentor when he was ready. After being instructed to bring 30 snowman horns and 1 king penguin beak, the boy said that of course he would return alive and unharmed. Trying to cover the snow with his hands, Luo thought that the level of this secret world was much higher than the secret level of the second level of the dungeon. Suddenly, a level 20 black snowman appeared in front of him out of nowhere, looking directly at the uninvited guest. Turning around, the boy wondered if there should be a monster in this part of the dungeon, and if it even had the strength to attack Lo himself. The Dark Emperor, after being instructed, launched an attack on the snowman, using his own power to restrain and defeat him. While his doppelganger was fighting the snowman, Ling Luo saw exactly where the snowman's horn was that he needed to retrieve. As soon as his master ordered him to attack and not just hold back so he wouldn't get to the boy, the Dark Emperor went on the attack. When the fight was over, the two of them walked on, and the Emperor asked if it worked. Lin replied that they got what they wanted. Many snowmen appeared around them who saw the horn that the boy was holding. Drawing their blades, they stood back to defend and attack. Law said that the real battle begins here and now and asked if the doppelganger was ready. He answered without thinking. The master said that they were very slow so they would win, but the Dark Emperor only agreed, already absorbed in the depths of the battle. Swinging his blade and biting his tongue in concentration, the boy attacked, telling himself that it would be nice if the snowman's horn fell from this group as well. They were standing in front of another snowman when they picked up a horn that raised its arms and growled at them in an attempt to intimidate. The Dark Emperor suddenly appeared next to the snowman and punched him in the jaw, and then he stood and could not believe that he was left without hands. The monster asked, dumbfounded, how they managed it. At the same moment, Ling Luo ran to the Dark Emperor, shouting for him to help without even turning back. From a run, the boy jumped onto the double's folded arms, pushed away from them, and now flew closer and closer to the monster, keeping his eyes on him. And the very next moment, Lin Luo cut the snowman in half with his blade, passing from the head to the very bottom. Returning to the doppelganger, the boy ordered him to finish off those who were lying down and were only unconscious. The Dark Emperor began his attack on the snowmen, going from one to the other and acting with incredible speed and killing without delay. Lin Luo was checking to see how many snowman horns they had collected in this battle, seeing that they had already collected more than 30 pieces that were required for the task. Turning his head in the direction of the snowmen, he thought that they were very strange, because they killed and killed them, and they did not stop. He could not understand what was the matter. The crowned monster with wine in hand asked how those people dared to attack, and said that now he would show them which one should really be killed. It was a king penguin. Raising a glass of wine, he ordered his subordinates to respawn and attack. The boy looked at what was happening in front of him, not understanding what had happened, because a bright yellow light appeared in front of him. Above the flipper of the Penguin King, this light began to grow and cast rays in different directions. Ling Luo stood as though he had been dug in and watched as the horns of the snowmen began to rise into the air one by one thanks to those rays. A black hole began to appear there, into which a beam shone and where the horns disappeared one by one. Breaking through the protective dome of ice that appeared after the rays disappeared, a huge snowman with horns all over his body climbed out into the light. Looking at all of this, Lin Luo wondered to himself if the Penguin King had gathered all his strength and used it to summon just one warrior. But then, preparing for the monster's attack, the boy remembered a fact from his past life. This monster was impossible to kill. Running under the huge monster's feet, Law called out to the Dark Emperor, ordering him to follow him. The double, having caught up with the master, took him in his arms so that they could quickly break away from the summoned monster that was running after them. King Penguin, meanwhile, used his powers again, summoning the others and urging them to be reborn as well. While they were running, Ling Luo had a plan and asked the Dark Emperor to throw him on the peak, showing him exactly which one he needed. And after a second, the boy flew to the top, thrown by the power of his double. Drawing his blade, Law swung in flight, his arm extended to control the fight and strike first. He hit the Penguin King in the face with his blade, and a golden crown flew off his head in the meantime. He looked with a smile at what he held in his hands, the beak of the King Penguin, and thought that the task was accomplished. The boy was looking at the piles of something black left over from the snowmen, and each of them had a crystal that needed to be retrieved according to the task. He stood in front of Desmond Miles and held out what he had obtained, saying that he had completed the task. The Level 2 assassin mentor said, finally admitting that the boy in front of him was really strong. Taking out 3 cards, he said he had 3 assassin abilities: Noble Rogue, Apostle of Darkness, and Windrunner. But that wasn't all, and there were secret specializations, and asked if the boy wanted them. He leaned in a little, saying that of course he wanted to. He thought to himself that he only came here for the secret specializations. The mentor told him to remember that the wrong change of specialization will lead to death, and asked if the boy really wanted it. With a smile, the boy said with a slight bow that it was worth it to get a new profession, even if he had to die. Desmond Miles laughed after such a response, saying that Lin Luo was the first one who wanted to take up a second profession so much. The guy became noticeably serious, thinking that in the past life people could get a second profession, which means that he himself can. Reaching out to the boy, the mentor of assassins released red and black threads of power, saying that there was no going back now and no regrets. Lin Luo now stood in the middle of the wasteland where Desmond had sent him, and remembered his words, where he had said that this was where the boy would find the answers he was looking for. Miles looked slyly at the boy and told him not to be shy and choose. Holding out his hand so that the light wouldn't interfere, Luo wondered if this was a wasteland. Standing in the middle of the light of the portal, he spread his arms to the sides and said that there is nothing here. And after a second, when he tripped over something, a pillar of power and light appeared in front of the boy. Looking around, he said to himself that now everything was clear to him. Those things, through one of which he tripped, were his future professions and had a different color. Putting his hand on the red one, Ling Luo saw that it was a dissident who had impunity and a fusion of good and evil. It was she who was recommended by the Lord of Prayers. The blue power represented Shadow's profession. Among the skills there was the mastery of a shadow, which could be split as well as cursed with it. Here the buffs were bigger. Taking his hand away from the beam, the boy realized that the color meant the level of coolness of the profession. He turned to the golden beam, concluding that it must be the best. Standing in front of the golden light, he saw the information about the legendary profession of Storm Swordsman, which produced a cool, supersonic sword, Sword Spirit, and Sword Hurricane. Lin Luo opened his mouth, not believing his eyes, because the profession was legendary, and he had never heard of it in his past life. He thought that with this ability he could fight back against the Clan of Eight, and wondered what the trick was. Not understanding why the Prayer Lord hadn't told him about this ability earlier, Luo immediately summoned him. He appeared at the same second. He asked why he lied, while the Master of Prayers thought to himself that it was difficult to trust a liar. Holding a scepter and a book, he asked his master to lie even to him. The Lord of Wishes and Prayers said, visibly nervous, that dissident would suit Law because it was the most optimal option for him. The doppelganger showed the chances of mastering the profession and the chance of keeping it, which were 1 and 0.5%, because the master asked him to do so. While the boy was thinking, the Lord of Prayers showed Shadow's stats, which were about 20% for mastery, but 9 for exchange. The doppelganger said that the indicators were better, but not the best they could be. Lin Luo asked to show the percentage of dissident. The doppelganger spread his arms to the sides and showed almost 100% success in mastering the profession. He said that this is the safest choice of all. The boy said that there would definitely be no problems with the dissident, and the doppelganger thanked the host for finally understanding what he was telling him. And then he asked why the Lord of Prayers thought that he needed a safe choice. He thought of himself as the most effective. The doppelganger looked at the master in surprise, even asking what he said. And then the owner of wishes listened to what the owner said, so that he would remember that it is necessary to show options, and not to choose them for him, as was the case this time. Lin Luo turned and walked towards the beam of golden light that was a few steps away from them. And then Luo asked if the success of mastering 1% would then allow him to squeeze the most out of the profession, and heard that it would be 100% potential once he mastered it. But he warned that in case of force majeure, his forces could weaken for 20 days or worse. The boy calmly and even with a slight smile asked if he was talking about death. Ling Luo said that it didn't matter if he mastered the profession or died, he would still be abandoned by others. And then he stretched out his hand closer to the Master of Wishes, saying that he had forgotten himself in this whole story. Having said that he made a wish, the boy went to the golden light. He wished to successfully master the profession. Yelling that he understood that this was all part of his plan, the Lord of Prayers began to grant the wish. He held the scepter up. He sat in the golden glow, eyes closed and taking his time. Desmond couldn't believe that it was the Sword of the Storm, and he couldn't believe that the boy had chosen it. He was just standing on his doorstep, all in his own power. Lin Luo stood and listened as the assassin mentor said that even SSS class could not master this ability, and so what if he managed to do it now? Sitting inside the golden light, the boy heard the instructions of the Master of Prayers, who said that one must understand the true essence of storm and death, loyalty to the sword, the wind and the storm. The boy playing the flute stopped playing and looked directly at Ling Luo. Having taken out the sword, he remained true to himself and thought that the wind would protect him and become his sword. He was smiling as he stood in front of the horde of monsters. He started wielding his sword, scattering the monsters. The wind became his sword, a sharp current that strikes hurricanes. The boy knew. To understand death, one must come face to face with it. In front of him stood monsters and a skeleton holding a sword. The long-haired boy was serious as he took out his sword. He took out a sword from its scabbard, the only and unique sword of the storm. While Ling Luo was gaining wisdom, the prayer master said with the last of his strength that he had almost no strength left and that he was falling back into sleep. Leaving the master, who was in a trance, he said an instruction so that he would remember that you can only trust yourself. The boy was thrown out of the golden flow. His nose was bleeding, and he spread his arms without regaining his balance. He lay face down, slumped in front of Desmond. It was obvious that the boy's life was hanging in the balance. The mentor of the killers said that he knew that, and that this was the boy's payment for wanting to jump above his head. And then he looked at the system, which said that another master of two professions was born. With a smile, he said that if the boy had not made it difficult, he would have become the only one in the world, and it is a pity that he was overtaken. Raising his head with a smile covered in blood, Lin Luo stood up and said that he was the only one in the world. Desmond was visibly shocked by what he heard from the boy. Sitting down on the sofa, he watched the boy drink the potion, realizing that it was a potion of complete recovery, and that he had received a new profession thanks to him. Meanwhile, Luo was noticeably improving. There was no more blood on his face, and he was still smiling as he looked at the assassin mentor. He began to scream, demanding answers and a story of how it all turned out. But instead of answering the question, the boy calmly told the mentor that he was on fire. Surprised and a little puzzled, he looked down where he had already started to burn the carpet on which he had dropped his cigarette. As Law made his way to the exit, Desmond began to jump in place, trying to extinguish both the carpet and himself because he was hot as hell. Luo walked away thinking that Lao Chi fell asleep because he had killed Bai Hong Li, so he had to hurry to complete everything according to his plan. After going outside, the boy checked the message and saw that it was Xiao Mei. She invited him to eat and reset the geolocation. He thought with a smile that she was so caring, and was it because of the Clan of Eight? He sent a reply to the girl's proposal, thinking to himself that he couldn't wait to get there tomorrow. At the same time, Xiao Mei was sitting on one of the leaders of the Clan of Eight, saying that she was glad that everything was finally happening with them. She wanted to check the message that came to her phone, but Bai Hong Li told her not to be distracted. He took her smartphone. Seeing that it was Ling Luo and that he offered to meet today and reset the geolocation, Bai Hong Li told her to clean up while he went to the meeting. The girl, left alone, clenched her teeth and fists in hatred. Lin Luo always spoiled everything for her. Two men stood in front of the monolith and read that after midnight the rat catastrophe would take place because the first in the world of his own two professions would appear. They did not know what to do. The old man said that she needed to get ready, prompting the younger boy to say that he understood what it was all about. Lin Luo sat on the sand by the bay and looked out at the night bay. He stared at his phone in surprise as he read that a curfew would be in effect from tomorrow and that no one could leave their homes after 8 p.m. The guy was surprised, because the curfew was introduced because of the future disaster. But why 5 days earlier than usual? While waiting, Lin remembered that the first wave that appeared in their world were insects from level 1 to 20. Then everyone received 4 times more experience, and the guild rose noticeably. Raising his head to the sky, he thought that now it would be much more difficult than that time, and that then all those who fought very hard for 15 days without breathing. He lay on the sand and put his hands behind his head. The boy thought that he could not protect those who protected him in his past life, and just pulled them along. But he thought that this time he would finally be able to protect everyone. Thinking back to himself as a child, Law thought that he was quite stupid back then, because he laughed when it hurt but didn't understand a lot. Then the girl pulled him by the hand, complaining that he was ridiculous, and always took him to treat his wounds and always did it herself. The boy recalled that Sister Wen had taught him many things. She then, treating his wounds, said that he would grow up and learn to cope with it himself. But the little boy said he would still need her. Then the Wen family took him in, even though he stole from them, and the girl said that he was so short, just short. He remembered how the girl congratulated him with protection and brought flowers, and he blushed. It was when Social Security took him away and he lived far away from her, but he always looked after himself. He remembered how the girl said that he should work well, and he thought now only that all the good moments were connected with her. And then it all disappeared. Then she was lying face down on the floor, covered in her own blood and not moving. He lost himself in his hatred and desire for revenge as he growled Bai Hong Li's name. He promised that he would finish it soon. They were driving in the car, heading to the place that Ling Luo had indicated in his message. In the front seat was Xiao Mei, and in the back was one of the leaders of the 8 clan. When he answered the phone, he said he had taken the information. Bai Hong Li was very focused on what he heard, and the girl wondered if such a powerful person as the master really had anyone to fear. She glanced at him, but was afraid to turn back. The master heard the order to get ready, because the engagement of Princess Yoshiko and Miyamoto will take place in a month. It was obvious that he was scared. Hearing that Miyamoto had awakened SSS-ranked powers, Bai Hong Li was furious, wondering how he could steal from him. Others believed that he was strong enough to take back the country. He thought he had to find all the crystals and rise to SSS rank by the end of the month, because Princess Yoshiko and the Clan of 8 belonged to him. And now he was thinking that Ling Luo would be strong enough for the task of finding the crystals that Li would then use. He told Xiao Mei that he was giving her a group of boys to keep an eye on one Yu-Zi. As long as she was in the crosshairs, Ling Luo would be working for them. He said that now he would stay in the shadows and warned her not to say a word about him if she met him. She agreed because she used it to sneak into the meeting of the Clan of 8. The man smiled with satisfaction, saying that she is smart because she already knows and remembers everything. The guy was lying with his eyes closed on the beach when the girl approached him. She thought with a smile that she had dealt with the head of her previous clan and that some Ling Luo there would be a very quick execution. Qing Xiaomei put on a mask of kindness and called out to him with a wide smile, calling him Ling Luo's brother and waving her hand. The boy sat down on the sand, looking in dumb surprise at Xiaomei running to him and being so happy. In the next moment, she fell face down on the sand, sprawled out in front of Law. She started yelling that it was Ling Luo's little brother that caused her to fall, looking a little hurt about it. He was already standing over the girl and with a grimace of disgust asked where Bai Hong Li was. Blushing a little, she said that she had no idea what he was talking about, and she was trying to understand how he knew the name of the head of the clan. Leaning towards her, visibly frightened, he repeated, Bai Hong Li, and explained that he was the leader of the Clan of Eight. Trying not to look him in the eyes, Xiao Mei said that she had indeed joined the Eight clan, but she had never met the head of the clan, only heard his name. He turned and walked away, telling her not to bother him, when she screamed for him to wait. While he was looking at something on the phone, Xiao Mei told a tale about how she had not met the clan head, but asked to be accepted there. While he dialed some number and checked for an answer, the girl continued to say that this was a great opportunity, and that he would have girls, money, and cars. After getting out of the car, Bai Hong Li picked up the phone and said that she had been assigned to follow Ling Luo a long time ago, and asked why she was calling only now. But it wasn't her. Ling Luo said with a smile that only now because he had just killed her. Bai Hong Li couldn't believe what he heard, asking if it was really him, Ling Luo. The clan leader was visibly irritated. He was angry when he heard the order to come out of the shadows because Law knew he was nearby. Qin Xiaomei cringed, asking if he knew everything from the beginning, but the boy simply replied that he knew everything. The leader of the Eight clan began to laugh as he appeared from the darkness and said that he had chosen a truly wonderful ability. He smiled and told the boy to join the clan and that he would have a great future, but Lin Luo didn't even smile. He asked if he was talking about his plan to rebuild the country, smiling for the first time since meeting Mei. He remembered Kudosav. Bai Hong Li opened his mouth in surprise, asking how the boy knew about this. Drawing his blade and letting the force coil around him, he said that they were only human, and that every one of them would die. At the same second, the Dark Emperor appeared, making a loud sound. As Ling Luo watched the clan leader's reaction with a smile, his doppelganger reached for the figure with a ghostly hand. With a swift and precise movement, he struck Bai Hong Li, knocking him back. They both ran fast. Xiao Mei ran even faster than Hong Li. The masked blonde was fighting the Dark Emperor, who was currently attacking her, trying to break through her defenses. Ling Luo clenched his teeth, not understanding how Bai Hong Li managed to keep up with the speed of the Emperor and not lose concentration, because it was his double who was now fighting for him. Standing next to the Emperor, the boy said that they had good tactics, but the doppelganger would lose its powers once its master died, so they lost anyway. Bai Hong Li laughed, saying that his doppelganger couldn't even break through his doppelganger's defenses, yet the boy swooped in to kill him. He thought to himself that he would not be able to withstand the enemy's strength for a long time, so he must be destroyed as soon as possible. Hong Li thought that his doppelganger's strength had decreased significantly, even though she was not harmed. But if the owner is reborn, the probability of victory over the enemy will increase significantly. They both looked at each other, realizing that they needed to end this fight as soon as possible. He ordered Kaguya's doppelganger to switch to rainy night mode and ordered the sword to be changed to kill Ling Luo's doppelganger. The boy told Lao Chi that Hong Li's doppelganger should not dodge the Dark Emperor's blows. He said with a smile that it was done. Kaguya attacked the Emperor with her sword, speeding up to carry out her master's order. Hong Li was startled to the point of opening his mouth because he was the doppelganger's target. Even if Kaguya hits the doppelganger, it will still hit him. He decided that it was time to enter the battle himself. Enraged, the head of the Clan of Eight wanted to start a fight and ordered his double to kill the body of her opponent's master. But in the next second, Bai Hong Li flinched back from the Dark Emperor's punch. Blood started pouring out of his mouth. Ling Luo looked up to see Hong Li's doppelganger swinging her sword at him, almost right next to him. The clan head taunted Luo and his double, asking how he could even think that his fist was stronger than their sword. Kaguya struck with her sword, but it fell to the ground without hitting anyone. She was surprised, and her master asked how an ordinary person could have such speed and reaction. Appearing behind Hong Li, Luo said that he recognized his ability to wield a doppelganger and his speed, but in this world, the clan head was puzzled. And in the next moment, the Dark Emperor appeared in front of him, raising his fist to strike him. As the Emperor's fist sank to the ground and raised dust, Ling Luo said that in this world only the victors would survive and the vanquished would die. Standing over Hong Li, the boy said that in his past life he had succeeded in avenging Sister Wen's death with his own hands. Reaching out his hand, he began to use his power. A new level skill was open to him called robbery. But then he started to think that he needed more level skills because he couldn't use robbery at the moment and had to choose a boost from the inventory. And then he was able to use it, stretching out his hand. The system immediately warned that he had become the owner of the ability Rainy Night. The girl, standing under an umbrella while it was raining, silently looked at her new master, ready to follow orders. He continued to think that the talent gave both strength and attack when paired with a doppelganger, and her attack speed is much higher than the Dark Emperor and good compatibility of defense and attack. He looked at Kaguya, who was waiting for his orders, and thought that her intelligence was 30 so she could fight on her own without being controlled. Luo also thought about the Dark Emperor's intelligence, which was only 1, so he always had to be followed and given orders. He told the girl with a smile that he hoped for a productive and good cooperation between them, and Kaguya only bowed and said that she would protect him until her last breath. The boy wondered if the inventory had exploded this time, because he had the opportunity to pick up what fell after killing his enemy. He was looking at the Wheel of Fortune ticket that was the only one left after Bai Hong Li's death. Thinking that he would be able to win the equipment just in time, the boy took it for himself. The boy began to call out to Lao Chi, but the Lord of Prayers did not answer. He thought that his past desires had exhausted him so much that it was impossible even to call. While they were walking, the girl asked the host if they would now go to the secret world, but the boy just rolled his eyes, saying that they had more important business and would go to a completely different place. The girl thought about what had happened, because her brother Kudo never turned off the phone. A maid came into her room and said it was time for the elders to arrange a meeting with Mr. Musashi. The princess thought that those old men wanted to give her in marriage to some warrior in order to resume their war. Sitting on the bed and calmly waiting, the girl thought that it would be better if he didn't come back at all. She recalled how she and her brother lived in China for a year under assumed names, went out and did whatever they wanted. It was the best year of her life. She was waiting for her brother's message so much that she almost cried. The girl thought that if he were here, he would definitely take her with him, and they would run away. Standing under Wen's sister's house, the boy thought that once Bai Hong Li's murder was known, the 8 clan would not be able to follow the girl, and she would be safe. He narrowed his eyes in displeasure when Kaguya asked if the master really liked Wen Yuzi. She said with satisfaction that she could probably be called his girlfriend if so. Lin Luo started to blush and excuse himself that he didn't, but the girl pressed on and asked if maybe she would be his future girlfriend. She said that the master seems to be staying here all night, and this girl, Wen Yuzi, is very important to him. Returning to the house, he smiled and said that it was true, she was very important to him. Ling Luo remembered how Wen's elder brother and sister were always there, calling him after them. He clenched his fists in anger and thought that in this life he would never let what happened in the past happen again and protect his loved ones. Discarding all good emotions, the boy said that he had to go. The double asked where they were going, surprised by such a decision. Even without returning, he said that they were going to the Holy Land to make him stronger. Having reached the right place, the boy greeted the policeman and said that he had to go through. One of them started teasing him, asking if Ling Luo had enough strength because this was a high difficulty level, but the boy answered with a smile that he did. When he heard that his personal data had to be shared, he created a black envelope that was wrapped in light blue power. They looked at the Dark Emperor's name in surprise, saying that it was so popular now. Another asked if he was the Dark Emperor who had won so many battles one after another. The guy said that it was really him and asked if he could pass. The guards answered yes. One of them said that one should not show off in front of the girls because everyone can come back to life only 3 times. It wasn't worth it. This made Lin Luo smile. They were staring at the trail of the boy and girl as they entered the Holy Land, and one of them was saying that people like him should be called heroes. Kaguya, holding the sword, looked at the master, and he received a message that she had passed level 8 because she had killed 8 level 30 monsters. The girl swung her sword confidently, slashing at the monsters from all sides while their eyes flew nearby. They and the Dark Emperor just watched the girl fight. Lin Luo sipped his cocktail, thinking that it was a good thing he brought Kaguya with him, because she understood the rules of the game. The girl said that she had destroyed all his enemies in that area when the battle was over, and she folded her umbrella. After praising Kaguya, he said she was well done and explained the purpose of the task. They needed to help the elves destroy the invaders of their world. He said that the shards that the elves grow on the tree are the same as the superpower crystals, and those trees can restore the player's energy. The double asked if she understood correctly that if they helped, they would receive gifts from the elves, and the guy said with a smile that usually everything happens like that. He thought sadly that in another life the humans had come up with a plan where they killed the monsters when the elven defenses were almost down and then collected twice as many crystals. But he said that in that case they would wait a long time while he looked in front of him. Kaguya asked what exactly they would be waiting for. He replied with a smile that they would wait for a convenient moment. And I thought getting a small reward could be just as nice as getting access to exclusive resources. One of the elves shouted that the defense had fallen and it was necessary to retreat. Lin Luo ordered Kaguya to go ahead while he ran himself, saying as he went that now they too should engage in battle. The level 35 monster captain was in command of the monstrous monsters, but it wasn't for long. Ling Luo laughed as they advanced and said that he got much more than he expected. The captain screamed, asking how a man could take his food and saying that he would die now. And the next moment, he ordered the Master of Prayers to wake up using one of the crystals he got from that tree. Lao Chi said that he had incredible strength and thanked his master. He informed the Lord of Prayers that the next attack was the Dark Emperor and that he would attack until the monster leader died. Lao Chi surrendered. The monster leader swung, clenching his fist and attacking. He ordered Kaguya to transform into the Sword of Rain form and that they needed to help the Dark Emperor because his attacks and her help would allow them to win. Immediately obeying the master's will, she threw down the umbrella to change the appearance of the sword. Monsters hold their maces and clubs while trying to attack. Kaguya helped the Dark Emperor by attacking the monsters. When the monster leader took a lot of damage, he began to activate some of his power. A funnel of light began to appear. He began to shout that it was the destructive light of death and that his doppelgangers should be careful not to fall under that light. The girl opened her umbrella, reflecting the light the Monster King directed at them, and shielded herself and the Dark Emperor behind her. Lin Luo analyzed the situation, seeing that this attack had taken a lot of energy from Kaguya, and even the Dark Emperor had lost a certain amount of energy. Plucking one of the crystals from the tree, the boy ordered the Dark Emperor to use the pause and attack, as their opponent was not fighting at full strength. The Dark Emperor clenched his fists, feeling the power that the crystal used by the Master gave him. While they were fighting and dodging, a system message came through that Lin Luo had mastered the destructive light of death by 30%, as well as strength and agility points. After the king was killed, Luo gained 9.5 million points as well as 200% of that, and was able to activate another profession ability, 10,000 swords. Swords began to appear from open portals around him, which activated his new power. Raising his hand, the boy commanded the swords to fly forward and attack, watching as they followed his command. He was satisfied because the attack power increased and the combat power did not decrease with the double strike, but he was somewhat confused. He was very displeased and confused, because if they stopped their attack for even a second, they would take a lot of damage. Lin Luo mentioned that when a mage reaches the first level, he can choose to restore magic or absorb magic. He thought about the fact that thanks to the first, you can restore your strength, and the second will help take it away from the monsters. He thought about the fact that they have time and opportunity to choose exactly the ability that will be most useful. The boy didn't want such an ability to be used as a backup plan, but it could be used once. Law stood by the tree and wondered how many more crystals he could knock out. Holding more than 100 shards in his hands, the boy happily thought that it was equivalent to 5 SSS-level supercrystals. Now he was thinking that there are also disadvantages to this when you skip levels, because there may be fewer crystals in other levels. Luo smiled in satisfaction as he said it seemed like it was time to use up his 10 Wheel of Fortune scrolls. He called the Lord of Prayers. Appearing, he bowed, greeting his master. Hugging Lao Chi, the boy offered to eat the restoration crystals and that he regretted spending so much energy to save Lao. He suggested adding 1 point to the desire. After listening to the prayer master's suggestion, Lin Luo threw the tickets up, summoning the Wheel of Fortune. He ordered the S-level items to appear, but without the recovery potion. He was holding a golden legend that cooled the SS-level crystal, and it made it possible to reduce the recovery time after a battle. While he was taking away the power of the crystal, the boy thought that he would be able to obtain 2 more professions of S-level and above thanks to it. He also looked at the Crystal of Intelligence, which could increase it by 10 units at once. Lao Chi suggested giving this crystal to the doppelganger who needed it the most. The boy asked the Master of Prayers what intelligence points can give, but he explained that intelligence is not the same as wisdom and intelligence. This is the ability to solve problems very quickly, and the higher the intelligence, the faster you learn new knowledge and experience. He thought about the Dark Emperor attacking with brute force, but the monsters are getting taller and their strength is greater than the double and put in a bad light. Lin Luo decided that the Dark Emperor needed this crystal the most. Approaching him, he told him to take the crystal with a smile. The Dark Emperor looked at what was in his hand. Crushing the crystal, the Dark Emperor thanked his master for his care, putting a hand to his chest in a gesture of gratitude. He said he would do everything to make sure there were no obstacles in Luo's way. Law said that he wouldn't need help fighting when he got older, and the Dark Emperor only agreed with the master. Now the boy thought that the increase in experience points was not as fast as when using the robbery directly. The prayer master held in his hands the green crystals that were supposed to increase the limit of life energy that Luo had given him, and asked to find another S-level ability for him. Lao Chi crushed the crystals, now absorbing their energy with a smile and feeling the limit of his own change. Near the school, one boy was pushed so hard that he hit his back against a garbage can. His blood was boiling, and the boy asked others not to go so far. They are classmates. The leader of the school gang said with a smile that the boy had already awakened his A-level ability and that one day they might leave him alone. The boy got to his feet and with a slightly crazy smile asked if the leader of the gang was doing too much when he summoned his ability. The fire that now burned on his clothes and did not burn. With a fist that was surrounded by flames, the boy swung at the leader of the school gang, remembering the last time, where there were punches on the face and that he didn't sneeze a little when he wanted to urinate on his head. The leader summoned his abilities, which tentacles curled around and one of them grabbed Yang Yun's hand. The thug asked if he really thought he was the only one keeping the true level of his abilities a secret. The boy shouted, "How is this possible? Because so many normal people can't get an S-level ability, and this juvenile thug was able to get it." Tentacles held his arms and legs. He struggled to break free, thinking that the Tao was far superior to the devil himself, if that was possible. Lin Luo, looking at the pictures that these scenes showed him, smiled with satisfaction, and his eyes flashed red. The next target was robbery. Dao asked the boy, calling him Little Yang, why he didn't go crazy like he did before. They said that they had to contact Brother Zhou for sure, and asked if Yang thought it was fair that he was an A-level and his brother was an S-level. The boy screamed, trying to free himself, but he heard what Dao said. He should go with them to make amends to the Green Demon. But they were interrupted, forcing Dao to turn his head away from his classmate at the sound. In front of them was a teacher who said that the boy had no right to bully everyone, including his classmates, because he had obtained a high-level ability. Yang Yun tried to say something but only called out to the teacher as one of the tentacles clamped down on his throat. They called out to Dao Zhou, frightened that the teacher had come, but he only told them not to panic. The girl was startled when the student said he had nothing to worry about, even though she found out by pointing the demon's tentacles right at her. She screamed, asking out loud with fear in her voice what he was doing as the tentacles began to wrap around her body and restrict her movements. Licking his lips, he stood by and said he knew the teacher admired people like him, but asked what she thought he wanted to do with her. She began to blush as one of the tentacles began to crawl up her inner thigh and up under her skirt. Yang shouted that the classmate was just a monster, but he looked crazy. He said, without taking his eyes off the teacher, that when he had fun, he would come back to finish him off. But suddenly, one of the tentacles holding the teacher was cut off. The boy looked in surprise at the one who did it. It was a girl with a sword. He asked who else she was. And then Dao saw that his followers also received blows to the neck, now falling unconscious. He began to defend himself, saying that they should all get out of here because they behave like real jerks. Lin Luo and Kaguya were smiling when he asked if he was Zhou Yu. He said that he didn't remember anyone else in the school having an S-class ability. so he asked, a little scared, who he was. At the call, the Master of Prayers appeared, smiling contentedly and opening his book, and said that he would do everything. At the same time, Lin Luo said with the same smile that someone would be very hurt in 30 seconds. The boy began to shout, spewing saliva, who he was because he was visibly afraid of what would happen next. But Ling Luo only said that it didn't matter at all, and that the boy had 3 seconds to come up with his parting words. The guy screamed, asking if it was his face and if he didn't have a double, and gave him a few seconds to go away, because then he is not responsible for himself. He looked at the schoolboy with satisfaction, ordering the Dark Emperor to go into battle. The little one was already scared when he saw another doppelganger and asked how many Ling Luo had. The Emperor looked down at the tentacles beginning to wrap around his legs. Satisfied that he managed to capture the opponent's double, the boy asked him if he still had many of them, and ordered the green demon to kill the Emperor. Seeing this, Lin Luo only laughed as he called out to Kaguya. The girl began to chop the tentacles with a rain sword, making her way to the boy himself. Seeing that the case was bad, he began to lie that he was also a victim because Yang Yun was bullying his brother. At that time, the boy himself clenched his fists out of anger. The boy started shouting for Zhou Luo to stop talking nonsense and lying. But Luo did not believe. He said that Zhou is just useless because he has such power to help fight evil and he is using it wrongly. And that is why he will die, and even the police will not bother them. Frightened, the boy began to turn to the teacher, asking to save him because he wanted so much to enter the university. When she didn't say anything and only looked behind the student, he even stopped asking, widening his eyes and realizing that this was really his end. Lin Luo activated the robbery ability, thinking that he hated people like Zhou Luo the most because he used his powers not for the good of humanity. The boy that Luo had saved came over and awkwardly thanked him, then asked if he wanted to say something. But the only thing he said while looking at the boy was the name of his doppelganger, calling him and drawing his attention. And then he took his doppelgangers and, waving goodbye to the boy, told both doppelgangers that they were going to get something to eat. To Luo's delight, the boy said that one day he would be just like him. It was obvious that he had found a new idol. Sitting in the cafeteria, Lin Luo studied the ability he had taken in surprise. He did not understand why the description was so general and there were no details. Deciding to understand how the ability works, the boy awakened the green demon. He focused on getting to know the skills. And then he smiled because it was a cool feeling, as if a dozen hands appeared in him and they all moved freely and he had control over them. But the boy thought it was no wonder that Kaguya killed him in one hit, and the Dark Emperor's attacks did no damage. However, the Emperor had his own unique abilities. The boy stretched out contentedly, saying that they had solved all the issues, and now he could treat his doppelgangers to fried chicken. The doppelgangers started thanking and happily saying that eating chicken was a very wise decision, and Kaguya was generally saying that it was her favorite food. Having ordered everything that his doppelgangers and himself could eat, the boy contentedly sat back on the chair and said that he would have to wait a little. A waitress ran up to them and asked if it was him who ordered 300 chicken rolls, 300 burgers, 200 pieces of tender beef, and 100 hamburgers with cod and 400 bottles of cola. She said their restaurant doesn't have that much food. Ling Luo displeasedly told her to carry everything they had. While he was waiting, the boy thought that in 6 months the food problem would become global, and he remembered that the cosmic crystal will store food from the moment it is moved into it, so it will be necessary to stock up. Kaguya told the host to look outside where the weather was getting worse. Beside her, the Dark Emperor was also looking out the window. He checked his phone to see that this was a rat-level disaster, a plague of insects that had flown in from another dimension. A woman flew to the cafe with her son in her arms and started screaming and begging to help her child. The woman screamed as the huge insect's claw grabbed her t-shirt and dragged her back outside. A huge spider hovered over the mother and her child, its mouth open and all its teeth showing. Ling Luo stood in front of the woman with the child to her complete surprise and looked at the spider with a smile. Summoning the Master of Prayers, the boy made a wish that the white smoke around him would dissipate. He said that it will be done. Now he attacked using his power when the fog was gone and Luo could see his opponents. Standing over the body of the spider monster, for which he gained experience and extra points, he thought that he would get no items, but he would get 4 times more experience. Giant flies were already flying towards him, while Luo calmly waited for them. He called out to the Dark Emperor and Kaguya, saying that it was time for them to go out and kill monsters to increase their levels. Kaguya was fighting fast and killing left and right, and the system announced that she got 8k experience points for killing a level 3 locust. The Dark Emperor fought alongside her, killing a locust of the same level, and gained 64 exp at 800% to exp. Yu Taijie said, looking at the fusion of the stranger and the praying mantis, that it was dangerous for ordinary people, but for those with abilities, it was extremely fortunate. The man asked if it wasn't because they gave 4 times more experience than the usual amount for killing such monsters. He said with satisfaction that the Emperor had reached the 2nd level yesterday after obtaining the 2nd profession, so the rat disaster had come earlier than expected. They all looked at the praying mantis, and Taijie said that they were all ready to form a team, and by using the abilities of the insects, they would be able to reach level 20 and enter the 2nd circle of consciousness. The long-haired man readily went outside, saying that then they would see who would gain the most experience in killing these monsters. Lo thought that after a certain period of time, the insects no longer gravitated towards the light, and they were reduced here, but this was temporary. That is why he did not relax. He ordered the Dark Emperor and Kaguya to guard the place while he himself had to go on some errands. Entering the cafe, the boy asked if his order had been packed. The girl and boy hiding behind the counter timidly said that yes, everything was already packed. Ling Luo said that no one would be looking for them for the next 10 days, but he advised not to leave until they were rescued and that they would survive if they took care, as they had water and food. A woman with a child asked to take them with her, but he said that they would be hurt if they went with him, and he told them to turn off the light and figure out how to close the windows. He said that people can only hope that China will come to the aid of its citizens to their surprise. But Ling Luo wondered why he had such a bad feeling and whether he had missed something. He thought that it all started because of his 2nd profession and rebirth, and he was afraid that Sister Wen would not be able to handle this influx. The long-haired man began to attack with a smile, saying that the God of Heaven is here, summoning his doppelganger. They crushed one of the insects, nailing it to the ground with force. He held out his hand to the lovely girl whom he had saved from an insect and asked what she would do to thank the poor monk. Keitaro used his power using the Emperor's eye and asked if the monk needed help. Mr. Liu said that Keitaro's desire to gain new experiences scared him, but Keitaro only smiled and asked if he was here to help the monk. The other boy said that the monster had been defeated and asked Taijie if he would mind if he reused his remains. The boy sat down next to the insect and, using his power, summoned it for his emperor, ordering it to appear again. Liu asked Taijie if it was the same shadow control ability and said that the partners he found were very powerful indeed. They were all now looking at Lin Luo as he ran past them. The men wondered if he was just like them and was gaining experience. Another said that the boy managed to get out and save himself. But Taijie looked at that stranger and didn't say a word. Law ran as fast as he could. He thought that according to his predictions, Sister Wen should have survived the disaster. After knocking on the door to check if his family was safe, he heard a girl's voice asking if Yuzi had returned. The girl opened the door, not believing her eyes, and asking if it was really Lin Luo. He asked where Aunt Li and Sister Wen were and why she was not at home. She said that Aunt had to go home and Yuzi is also not there yet, and she can't call because of the fog outside. Ling Luo was furious, thinking that Sister Wen had of course not returned and something must have happened. He began to tell her not to open windows and doors and not to respond to any noise. It was noticeable that he was nervous, but the aunt still agreed. The boy went in search of his aunt and sister, thinking that without a second fighting ability, a battle with monsters is a direct road to death. He hoped that Yuzi was safe. In the fog, the Dark Emperor called the master and said that there is a person here. He pointed to the girl who was unconscious and covered in blood. Lin Luo said that she could not be saved anymore and thought that the scale of the disaster had increased and Sister Wen should be found as soon as possible. He ordered Lao Qi to immediately tell him where Wen Yuzi was. The boy looked under his feet where a kind of map appeared, showing him and Wen Yu and where to look for it. Meanwhile, one of the girl's colleagues grabbed her head and began wailing that the end of the world had already come, and that they would all die and that no one would be saved. He began to scare the girls, saying that God did not just shut them up together because he wants them to die together. The girls told him to calm down because they didn't want anything from him. And another girl even said that she wouldn't look at him even if he was the last person on Earth. The guy started shouting at the girl, telling her to shut up, and now he will look down on her. The other girl started grabbing the boy's hands, telling him to let the girl go. But he only swung and slapped the girl with all his swing, knocking her to the floor. He said he would do whatever he wanted and whenever he wanted and asked them to let him die without regret. The girl was sobbing, asking him to let her go. Tears of helplessness welled up in Yuzi's eyes. But the very next moment the boy hit her in the face, gave her a noticeable slap, and ordered her to shut up because he would punish her. Lying on the floor, she looked at the door, saying that insects were getting in here. And the next moment the boy leaned back, blood flowed from his nose. Behind Wen Yuzi was Ling Luo. She was surprised, not turning around and asking if it was really Brother Lin. The guy looked at the girl with a guilty look and apologized for being late. Turning to the boy who was still alive and asking what was wrong with him, Ling Luo only called out to the Dark Emperor, and a second later, the scoundrel was kicked in the face by Lin Luo's double. As the unfortunate man screamed and told him to let go, Ling Luo comforted Sister Wen by hugging her and holding her close to make her feel safe. The boy screamed, demanding an answer as to what he had done to the girl, deaf to pleas to let him go. When he agreed to say, the Dark Emperor immediately let go of his neck and pushed him against the wall. And then he hugged Lo by the legs, saying that he had misunderstood everything and that he had not done anything to the girl. He asked for mercy. With red eyes and looking very demonic, the boy asked if that was all. While the girl was hiding in his arms, Lin said that he gave the boy two options. He would either beat him to death or he would go outside and meet his death there. He ordered to choose. The boy started running, thanking his brother for letting him go. Sweating, he said he was choosing the street. While he was walking outside, Ling Luo told a prayer master who was standing nearby that he wanted to make a wish to be attacked by 200 beetles in 5 minutes. Turning around with a crazy smile, he thought that the boy was an idiot and that no one would survive if he broke the glass. But the next moment he was caught by the green demon's tentacles, and the boy screamed, not expecting it. He found himself on the asphalt and saw that angry beetles, who had already noticed him, were heading towards him. The insects immediately attacked him, digging into his body with their teeth. While stroking the girl's hair, Lin Luo reassured her, telling her that everything was fine now and that she was safe. She raised her head and asked Brother Lin if he had really let him go. But the boy said that he could not do it, because he had offended the person dearest to him. He said the boy would die from the calls of angry bugs, and even then he would only pay 1% of what he did to her. As the girl thanked, Kaguya asked the host if she would now be his girlfriend, making Sister Wen blush. Blushing, he yelled at his twin not to talk nonsense while Yuzi turned away. But Kaguya stood her ground, saying that he had said that she was the most precious person to him, making them think twice. The doppelganger asked the host if he didn't like the girl at all, but he only scratched the back of his head and tried to find words. The boy began to make excuses, trying to do everything so that his sister did not think anything bad about him under her unblinking gaze. Yuzi put her hand to her mouth, and during this drama, her colleague, who hit her head after being hit by that guy, came to her senses and passed out. Seeing this, the girl ran to her, hugging her neck and glad that she was all right. And then she saw Lin Luo and started yelling at the girl that he was a bully under Luo's cheerful gaze. But the girl began to calm her down, saying that she should not worry and that this is her friend. His name is Lin Luo, and he saved them. And then he came back and said seriously that they couldn't stay here and that they had to go away. The aunt who opened the door was incredibly happy to see Yuzi. Immediately at the door, she asked if she was all right. The girl threw herself into her mother's arms, hugging her tightly and starting to cry. The aunt asked how Wen was doing, and Yu replied that she and Ling Luo had walked her home and made sure she was safe. The woman thanked little Luo with a smile, and he frowned. Wen Yu asked where the father was, but the mother replied that he was a civil servant, so he was where he should be. Lin remembered that Uncle Wen was working at Han Sen's office center when they last saw each other, and it was interesting why he was called to work. Getting up, he said that he had to visit his uncle at work, because there the insects were able to get inside without any effort. Both women opened their mouths. He asked his aunt not to worry about him and said that he would definitely be fine and that he would bring his uncle home safe and sound. Standing near the center, Lin Luo thought that it looked as if a herd of beetles had already walked over it. Going inside, the boy was worried because he felt the energy of the place. He thought that level 20 insects couldn't feel it, but he felt it well. His eyes widened when he saw in front of him the guardian of all the hell that was happening here. He saw the funnel from which these insects appeared and understood that their level was higher than usual, because they were near the progenitor. He thought that it was necessary to kill the guardians of the forefather to end the catastrophe, and in the past life, those who killed the guardians were surrounded by other people. The boy ran away to prepare to fight the thing, then decided to come back when he was ready. The men in the office ran away in fear, warning others to run and save themselves, with huge insects running after them. The man ordered the clerk to block the door with a closet, because if those insects get into the room, they are dead. Even after blocking the door, the men saw insects hitting the door and making huge dents in it. One of them held his head, scared to death, while the other covered his mouth with his hand and tried even to breathe as quietly as possible so as not to attract attention. They turned to the door in surprise when they heard that it was Brother Lin who had killed one of the insects. Opening the door, they saw a smiling boy waving his hand and telling Uncle Wen that they had not seen each other for a long time. The men were standing in front of the portal to the Holy Land, but none of them could believe that the Dark Emperor had passed through it first, because it took a lot of strength there. Yu Taijie was angry and gritted his teeth because he couldn't believe that that player had done it first. He was angry because that player took the strongest awakened from him, and also the secret worlds ended earlier. One of the company asked why the Dark Emperor took so long to clean the secret world, although he knew that he went there alone. The monk said that the boy looked so much like him, and that he must have come from the future. He agreed, but said that he still did not know why it was possible to take away his strength. Turning, he walked away, saying that they had little time and they still needed to explore other worlds. Ji didn't believe that the Dark Emperor would be able to wipe them all out. Aunt and Uncle asked where the boy got such strength, because he looked more like Superman from the movie. He told his uncle that it was simple, and that his S-level abilities had just awakened. Wen was visibly surprised, saying that abilities of this level can really do this because he is level D, and Aunt is level C. Putting her hands on the boy's shoulders, the girl said with a smile that she was still better than him. She had the A-level ability, Sounds of Nature. While the boy was trying to come up with something after the question about abilities, Wan Yu told his mother that you shouldn't ask a stranger like that. The woman apologized, but said that Brother Lo had grown so much that she could not get used to it. He said that everything was fine, and told him about the Power of Heaven ability that gives him increased attack in battle. The girl said that he was incredibly cool and asked him to take her in the dungeon with him when he went there, because she was afraid to clear it on her own. Saying that the boy should take advantage of the opportunity, Uncle Wen thanked him for saving him and said that the boy could stay as they had a spare guest room. He started to say that it was inconvenient, but Wen Yu didn't want to listen. She took him by the hand and pulled him, telling him to just stay with them for the night. Uncle Wen said that he once lost touch with the boy from the orphanage, but today he saved his family. Sitting on the bed, the boy thought that in this life he saved the whole family, but he cannot stay here for a long time because he still needs to save his brother. He didn't want to leave this house, but he still needed another S-level double to fill in the gaps in the plan. The man right in the nest of insects smiled contentedly, saying that he would sow fear and despair in all living things. He called the demon of despair. A demon of despair appeared from the portal, who immediately growled, saying that he smelled a wonderful smell. The man knelt before the demon contentedly, rejoicing that the SS-level doppelganger was now his. The demon told his hearers to sacrifice all his despair and fear to him, and then promised to give him unprecedented power. While he looked contentedly at his doppelganger, who needed a victim, his little daughter sat nearby, calling out to her father in fear. Before that, he told his daughter to sit a little at home alone, because he needed to go to the store for some things. She then agreed and said that she would wait for him. The child watched as the father walked out of the room, leaving the girl alone with the monster. Huddled in a corner, she hugged her knees and her toy, crying and calling for her father. Standing on the roof of the building, Lin Luo reflected that he had killed 15 people with the smiling coffin ability. But 2 more people have awakened abilities of the same level. He told the prayer master standing next to him that he wanted to know the whereabouts of Hu Jinming. After he got the answer, the boy jumped off the roof and cheerfully announced that the hunting season was about to begin. The boy let out a satisfied squeal, glad that this SS-level ability could raise itself without having to pierce anything. He giggled, saying that he wouldn't care who would make fun of him now, and he will make a woman who abandoned her husband and child regret what she did. The demon bowed, calling the boy a slave, and said that the monsters didn't give enough power and the fear they instilled wasn't enough for him. The demon explained that he needed human fear because it was the only thing that replenished his energy completely, to which the man snarled on the spot and asked if he was proposing to kill people. Using a devilish whisper, the demon asked if his servant wanted even more power. Completely under the control of the demon, the man shouted that he would do anything for his master. A couple sat in a hole in the wall of the house. The man was holding his wife and a knife in the other hand, asking who the hell he was and what he needed. The man asked if they would fit, and the demon already said that the smell of this fear is so intoxicating and wonderful. Having ordered his wife and child to run away, the man rushed at the monster with a sword, just to buy some time so that his family could be saved. But at the same second, the woman covered her mouth with her hand, watching her husband being killed before her eyes. Having feasted on a person, the demon said that the power of human fear is much higher. He licked himself, satisfied with what he had eaten. The man looked at the doppelganger he had given birth to and asked himself what kind of monster it was. The demon drank everything, creating something like a mummy from the body in a matter of seconds. And when he finished, he turned his attention to the woman and the child, saying that this was not enough for him and he needed more fear. He growled, baring all his teeth and making a loud and drawn-out sound. But that demonic slave appeared in front of the woman, covering her with himself and telling him to stop, because he called him to get rid of the monsters. But he was immediately killed by the monster's paw, which was squeezing his chest and causing pain. He said that he was a disaster because he was born out of fear and despair in the soul of the man himself. And when he regains his strength, he will thank you with great strength. And then the boy flew down, and the demon ordered to get rid of humanity and as soon as possible. He even opened his mouth in surprise when he heard that his task was to kill that woman. The guy started arguing, saying no, he absolutely refused to do it. But the demon now looked green as it used its power and ordered it to be done immediately. He was controlled by the power of the devil's whisper. So the man ran in the direction of the woman, holding out his hand in front of him to reach her as soon as possible. He took the knife left by the stranger's husband and squeezed it in his hand. The next moment, he lifted it up. Ling Luo appeared just now, observing what was happening outside. Dirty and mad, the boy turned to the visitor he had heard. He recognized him standing over the body of the girl he had killed. The Dark Emperor and Ling Luo looked at each other with a look full of anger and rage. The boy ordered to kill this monster. The Dark Emperor launched his attack, connecting all of his forces, which were now swirling around him. The demon said that it was the first time he had met a person with such energy, and that he himself seemed to have plunged into despair and fear a lot and often. The Emperor began to defend himself against the attack that the demon had initiated, telling them both to back off. The demon growled, saying that otherwise it would be Ling Luo that he would feast on. The demon attacked with a fist, but bumped into something that was Kaguya's umbrella. She stood in front of Ling Luo and protected him. The demon tried again, using his powers and trying to break through the defenses and get to the boy. Watching his opponent, the boy thought that the demon was damn fast, and that if it weren't for the double, he wouldn't have had time to react. Summoned by the master, the Dark Emperor punched the demon in the face, dealing damage and distracting it from the master. Realizing that he was stronger than the Dark Emperor, the demon raised his fist and, shouting for him to die, began to attack. While watching the battle, Lin Luo told Kaguya that she needed to use the Nightstorm sword, hinting that she should do so as soon as possible. Saying she obeyed, the girl jumped, changing her powers and awakening Nightstorm. Saying that they were all like ants to him, the demon scattered both of Ling Luo's doppelgangers, telling them to get back. The boy caught Kaguya, who screamed as she bumped into her master. The demon raised his hands above his head, connecting them in a lock, and said that now this doll will come to an end. In desperation, Ling Luo shouted as he summoned a green demon. He immediately appeared with tentacles next to him. The demon asked, looking at all this, "What the hell is this boy doing?" The tentacles bound the demon's movements more and more, preventing it from moving, and at the same moment that he could not move, the girl plunged the sword into his stomach, holding the hilt with both hands. Watching the demon fall, Lin Luo asked the demon with a smile if he thought he was good at melee combat. The demon said that he cannot die, because he is the main fear of people, and as long as they feel him, as long as he lives. Luo said that he would bow his head at his feet the next time they met. As they stood there, he thought that Kaguya's attack had succeeded because her powers were in sync with the Dark Emperor's, and it was pure teamwork. The man who summoned the demon began to wail, standing on his knees, and asked what he had done. He could not believe that he had killed a man, looking at his hands and repeating it over and over. Lin Luo was red-eyed again and asked the man what his last words would be before he died. He fell face down, bowing and saying he didn't want it. His mind did not belong to him, and he did not want to kill anyone. The boy said seriously that there would be a price to pay for the murder, and as long as he was alive, there was always a chance that his doppelganger would wake up again. On his knees, he agreed to pay for the murder, but asked to protect his daughter and to say that her father had left and would return when she grew up to visit her. After being punched in the stomach, Law leaned over and whispered in the man's ear not to worry and to take care of his daughter. With tears in his eyes, he smiled, thanking him for such a favor. Staring at the blood-stained asphalt, Law read that he had activated robbery again and was looking at what exactly he wanted to choose this time. He thought about the Devil's Double and how he could retreat and bend the master to his will, and if he chooses soul power, he can rise to the SS level. While he was taking away the ability, he thought that he would also not be able to conquer such a power if even Hu Jinming was unable to. The boy was looking at the message that the heist had earned him an SS-level ability called the Emotional Detonator. He realized that the ability could boost the doppelganger's attack, so he shouted as he summoned a new minion. In front of him was an egg that fit in the palm of his hand and was now burning around with a bright red light. The boy did not understand what it was and where his demon was. The boy looked at the egg, wondering what the hell it was. He wondered if the doppelganger could really be formless, but the information said that it absorbed whatever emotion the host gave it. He stood above the city and looked down through the fog, thinking it was so thick and there were bugs down there. He was calling someone for help to save him. The boy closed his eyes, realizing that these were not his thoughts. Only then did he cover himself from exhaustion. He fell to his knees and exhaled, thinking that it was very good that the ability only lasted for 5 seconds because there was too much information and emotion. He thought that Hu Jinmin chose fear for the emotion of this egg for a reason, because there are monsters on the streets here, but with a certain use, a devil double can be born. Looking at the egg, he decided he should wait for the emotion sensor to cool down and then try again to see if he had any other options. Lin Luo hid the egg in his pocket and summoned the Master of Prayers to tell him where the man's daughter was. The girl sat on the floor in the dark, hugged the toy, and was afraid. She kept asking where Dad was and why he hadn't returned yet. Suddenly there was a knock at the door and the man told Hu Xinyue that he was her father's friend. The girl came closer, questioning. They were sitting at a table covered with all kinds of fast food, while the girl asked Lin's brother when her dad would be back. He said that Dad would come back later because he had to go to protect Hangzhou, but said that he asked him to take care of her. The girl screamed, saying that it was cool because her dad was very strong. The boy asked if she thought he was deceiving her, but the girl said that her ability was to feel emotions and that there was only kindness in Brother Lin. She said that's why she trusts him, because he's really a very good friend to her dad. Saying goodbye to the girl, he thought that as soon as the fog cleared, he would find a good family for the little one. When he went outside, the boy thought that there were a lot of people like Hu Ziming in these times of chaos reigning on the streets. The boy walked on, thinking that all human values together lost the least importance. He wanted to help the whole world. Lin Luo thought he would become the king of all China and help the people by creating a safe environment for protection. Anyone who stands in his way will turn to ashes. The 5 people returned to Lingmin Temple, walking up the stairs. They looked in front of them, and Lao Yu said that, judging by the memories of the past life, there was indeed a guardian in this temple. The monk said that, first of all, before the mission begins, a captain must be chosen. The boy thought to himself whether he thinks that Liu Tianshi wants to nominate himself and claims leadership. Lao talked about the fact that the Dark Emperor has serious abilities, but he could not restore in his memory something from his past life, so he asked to leave his quarrels for later. The monk asked if he did not have a very high opinion of the emperor because he had never heard of him before in his past life. Putting his arms around the boy's shoulders, he said that he would help him kill the Dark Emperor that Lao feared so much, but he asked if he could become a captain for this. Lao said that the Dark Emperor had taken his powers and he would get them back sooner or later with or without the monk's help. While Lao was thinking about his powers, Liu thought that he shouldn't let him regain his powers because he would take all the power for himself again and he wouldn't stand a chance. Returning to the eagle, Lao asked it to check if there was anyone nearby. He readily said that he would carry out the command. He said that somewhere 1,000 meters away from them, the strongest is a level 7 praying mantis. The monk asked what he was going to do and what he was doing now, because he said that the catastrophe had started earlier, and the place where it appeared had shifted. Lin Luo ran with all his might to where the center of the disaster was, just to be in time. He was looking at a level 34 monster that had many times more health than a level 35 captain monster. But after studying his information, Luo said to himself that the huge one has the ability to summon, but there is nothing terrible about it. The boy said that he was counting on the Dark Emperor and Kaguya because their abilities could complement each other. They received such an ability not so long ago. The Emperor attacked again, but the system reported that the opponent's body was covered with something from another world, and his powers were invalid against him. Luo even opened his mouth in surprise, wondering if that guy was really that strong. And then he turned around, even more surprised when he heard a sound and tried to understand what it was. Praying mantises began to appear around, flying from everywhere, and Lin thought he wasn't sure he could fight back. But then he calmed down, telling himself not to spit, because the bigger the storm, the more expensive the fish will be. He called his doppelgangers. When they spoke, he drew his blade and held it out in front of him. Luo ordered the twins to use the swift wind swords. There were reporters on the streets of Hangzhou filming a story about what was happening here. The girl talked about the white fog in which the whole city was engulfed. The operator showed where to look, drawing the reporter's attention to something. She immediately began to tell about everything she saw. They enlarged the picture to get a better look at the monster that was in the middle of the city, but they saw a man on its back. She said that this is impossible, and although their world has plunged into an era where more and more heroes appear, but until now the level of awakened ones is not high, so how does he fight with a monster? Meanwhile, Lin Luo, the Dark Emperor, and Kaguya stood back to back, waiting for another attack. The boy thought that there were too many of them, and doppelgangers needed a lot of energy and spent a lot of it as well. The boy told his doppelgangers that they would only fight after they had replenished their energy, and told them not to let the bugs get too close. He thought about an energy replenishment crystal, but there was no point in using them right now because swords require a lot of energy, and they don't last long. Lin Luo was pleased that he had reached level 24. The system sent this message in a timely fashion, which was great news. On the ability panel, the boy chose flexibility by tapping on the corresponding icon. Li was studying the information about the new ability he was going to use, because there the energy consumption is greatly reduced, and even under certain conditions, there are much more blades. Taking his blade better, the boy thought with a smile that it was time to kill this monster. Summoning the Dark Emperor and Kaguya, he ordered them all to attack together with a plan. As soon as the boy was at the forefront of their group, they all began to attack, determined to win the duel. They were going to kill the king of insects. They approached the insect king, who roared at them with his swords drawn. Lin Luo shouted, wishing the monster dead as they began to attack. Standing behind and raising his sword, he ordered the twins to go all out. He made a wish to the owner of wishes, who appeared nearby so that no beetle could get closer than a meter to him, which was fulfilled. He used a brutality crystal that increased the doppelganger's level by 30%, and then he summoned a green demon. Looking at the swarm of insects flying towards him, the boy saw that the health of the king of insects was reduced by 30%, but he summoned his subordinates. He ordered a breathless attack. Watching the stranger fight on the insect's back, the girl wished him luck when she found nothing on board as a weapon. She even had tears in her eyes. Crouching down, Lin stuck the blade into the ground and held onto it. It seemed to him that he had absolutely no strength left for anything. The Lord of Prayers, who appeared behind him, said that he would restore his strength. Ling Luo apologized to Lao Zi for bothering him, but Lao Zi only smiled and said that it was his duty to protect him. As soon as he felt better, the boy immediately ran into battle, telling the Insect King that they would see who could last longer. Bringing the blade above his head and jumping, the boy summoned a green demon while the Insect King opened his mouth, waiting for his opponent. The boy released his tentacles, attacking the king with them and distracting him. In flight, Lin Luo activated the ability of 1,000 swords that began to appear beside him from portals and were ready to attack as soon as he ordered. The boy began to attack, inflicting a rather noticeable blow on the back of the monster, which caused it to scream. Lin continued to press down on the sword, crying out from the strain and power he was putting into the blow, but it still sliced through the Insect King's flesh further and further, reaching the bones. He landed on one knee, sticking his blade into the ground and bowing his head. After the news that the Dark Emperor was the first to kill the Insect King, the reporter girl looked at Luo below in surprise and wondered if he was really the Dark Emperor. She began to wipe her tears, saying that she could not even think that such a young but strong and avid player would become the Emperor. At that moment, Lin Luo returned to her, smiling and looking over his shoulder at the reporters. Lo was sitting on the dead monster's back and was looking over all the new products, thinking about the crystals he got, in addition to the dozen fortune tickets. He looked at the street, thinking that it seemed to be true, and the entire Demon King's army would die if he himself was killed. And then he explained the situation to the Dark Emperor, saying that everything was fine, that he was being filmed, and that it would allow him to gain the fame he needed. The boy thought that after the battle, he didn't have many crystals left, and that the map of the Holy Land must have been restored, and he had to go there for something. While they were walking, the boy ordered the prayer master to take them to the square and also to find Ziwan Ying's location. 4 boys stood and looked somewhere, smiling and hooting. The girl asked what they were doing and said that they were saying that they would shoot a TV series. She was lying on the bed and was almost naked and a little red. The guy said that they will still shoot the series, but about what she knows the most and the best. The boys looked at each other and the other licked his lips as the first said, "Why don't the teachers team up with the teacher and discuss their experiences?" Several pairs of hands began to pull the girl quite rudely in different directions, especially by the neckline of her shirt. She screamed because she didn't expect it. She covered herself with her arms crossed on her chest, tears of helplessness running down her cheeks. Behind one of the boys was a beautiful woman who would have caught everyone's attention. She looked at the bullying of the teacher with a smile. Standing at the door of the abandoned factory, he thought about the fact that Ziwan Ying was a woman, and how could she be outside the abandoned factory? Returning to the Dark Emperor, Ling Luo ordered him to open the door. The doppelganger opened the door and left first, letting some light into the total darkness. The Lord of Prayers received a task from the host, so that no one could harm him during the next 30 seconds. He fulfilled his wish. All the doppelgangers looked at him in shock and fear and called out to him. He had turned noticeably white and seemed to be about to collapse. Kaguya held him back from hitting him, asking what was wrong with him. She was clearly worried about the owner. Lao Chi ordered the Dark Emperor to take care of their master while he stared at one point in front of him. He took Kaguya and they went to find out who exactly was behind all this. What happened to their master? Lin Luo woke up and sat up on the bed, immediately looking around and realizing that it looked very much like a wedding hall. He saw the wedding photo on the shelf by the bed and was surprised. Are he and his sister Wen married? 2 girls in beautiful evening dresses appeared in front of him and called him. Kaguya generally looked very loose. Wiping his face because he was inclined to do this, the boy asked why they were both here, and even more so in this form. Lo was afraid to even breathe, until the girls said he must be very tired, and they could help him relax for only $1,000 a night. And in the real world, Kaguya attacked the stranger, saying that now she will see how she will run away now. The girl gritted her teeth, looking at how much rage there was in this girl who was her rival. She would have died long ago from her blade if everything here had not obeyed her. The stranger asked why she was being chased, and also whether the distance between her and the owner had reached a critical point. Kaguya asked Lao Chi if the master had made a wish so that he could not be harmed, and why then he was lying unconscious. The girl said with a smile that this is all because no one is attacking their master, and his wish has come true, and he is resting in a heavenly place, and this can be considered help. The girl with a smile said a simple postscript, until he dies. The Lord of Prayers thanked her for the explanation with a smile. When the girl screamed, asking what he was talking about and not understanding what she had done, Lao Chi turned back to the wish book, activating his powers that flowed out of his hands. He ordered the book to wake his sleeping master. But Ling Luo was in his fantasy, thinking that he couldn't believe that everything had worked out for him and so quickly, because it was all dreams. Wen asked about the dream, but he said with a smile leaning down that Sister Wen, the real one, would not have taken such an initiative. He held his head, trying to regain consciousness while the Dark Emperor told his master to wake up and helped him. Kaguya threw herself on her master's neck, hugging him and saying that she was very glad that he had woken up because Lao Chi had saved him from the pink mirage. The girl asked how he managed to get out of her mirage because no one had ever gotten out of it before. She was visibly nervous, but instead, he asked the girl if she was a double, and if she was the one who created this illusion. The Dark Emperor at the same time rushed at the girl, saying that anyone who insulted his master would die. He had already clenched his hand into a fist for battle. He began to attack, swinging his fist and causing the girl to cry out in fear as she tried to deflect. Ling Luo thought to himself that this girl had tricked him even if his wish would come true, but he said out loud that there was something in this twin. Meanwhile, the Dark Emperor led the other girl by the hand, who was screaming and writhing, demanding to be let go. She began to beg him not to kill her. The girl said that she did not want to hurt Ling Luo, trying to make excuses as soon as possible. The boy asked if she was Jiwan Ying, and pointed to the murdered people a little distance away, and asked if she did it. With tears in her eyes, she said that it was their fault, because they tricked her into coming here, and that they wanted to make a movie and then humiliated her. The girl assured that she did not want this. Wan Ying came closer, begging him to spare her and that she would do whatever he said and that she could still be his girlfriend. Law looked down at her, saying that she was using her natural powers on him again. He called out to Kaguya, and in a second the sword of his rain double crippled the girl's chest, making her open her eyes in surprise. With her last breath, she asked why her ability of fateful seduction had failed. She squinted at the boy. Ling Luo said that those people deserved to die, but she tried to kill him in a sneaky way. Looking at the girl's body, he told the system to take away Wang Ying's ability. He readily averted his gaze, saying that it was time to meet his new doppelganger, the Phantom Queen. A cute girl with horns and pigtails smiled and greeted the owner. The boy looked at her, asking why she was so different from her past incarnation. The big-eyed girl said she thought he was upset about it. In a moment she became as she was, taking the face of the surprised boy with 2 fingers and asking if he wanted her to be in the form of a slave. But he begged her to keep the one she has now. Returning to her past image, she said that the master was very cute when he was embarrassed. While she stood by, the boy studied her powers, more interesting being the form of the succubus queen. The boy thought that although she was not a battle double, she had a good store of energy and had tremendous control. After all, as long as the opponent is under control, 1 blow will be enough. As he left, the boy stretched, telling Lao Chi that the day seemed to be going well. Lin Luo mused that it was too early to relax. The boy said that at the same time as Wang Ying, there was another doppelganger, and he didn't even negotiate, and the Lord of Prayers had already done what was necessary. The guy was walking down the street, battered and bruised, telling himself that it was some sort of SS-level ability that only activated when he was badly beaten. As he walked home, he told himself that he probably would have died a long time ago if he hadn't robbed the pharmacy, because his injuries from the dungeon remained in the real world. A girl was lying on the bed, smiling at him and calling him Brother Khan. The boy stopped dead in his tracks, asking Sister Hong what she was doing here. He smiled awkwardly as he looked at her. She sat down on the bed and said with a smile that she was indeed back. He opened his mouth to ask why, since she had dumped him when she got into the institution, and he hadn't. But all his arguments, which he used to start the argument, were dispelled when Sister Hong kissed him on the cheek. Khan squirmed on the bed as she sat on top of him, asking if he could forgive her. She, blushing, said that if he wanted to punish her, she was not against it. Khan was on top of the girl, clutching her hand and pinning her to the bed. Meanwhile, she said that he should punish her already. Ling Luo and Xiao Mei were standing over the bed, and he was saying that Pink Mirage was a good ability, because Kang didn't even notice when he fell into it. Turning back to Kaguya, the boy told her to start. She obeyed. Looking at the sleeping boy who was drooling in his sleep, she brought her sword over him, raising the blade above her head. But he grabbed the blade of the sword in his sleep, using his strength, and Kaguya told her master that she couldn't pull the blade out of his hand. Lo shouted, asking what was going on. His plan went wrong, and he began to worry. A double has appeared, the destroyer of true cold, and anyone who doubts its power will pay dearly for it. Summoning a green demon, the boy ordered Kaguya and the Dark Emperor to help him. Khan's double created a wall of ice before being attacked by the Dark Emperor, but the Emperor turned to his powers, which sparkled all over his armor, and said that his ice wall would not stop him. And when it was broken, he released ice chains. The Dark Emperor was handcuffed, saying he couldn't move. Ling Luo said that he was moving too fast when one of the chains was too close for him. And while he was giving out commands, Kaguya appeared in front of the owner, cutting the chains with a sword that wanted to entangle him. He smiled contentedly, saying that the doppelganger's reactions were just lightning fast, and this ability was simply amazing. Returning to the battlefield in Khan's apartment again, the boy summoned the Green Demon and the Dark Emperor, telling them to return. The True Cold Destroyer asked with a smile and sarcastically if he was really afraid to attack him. Ling Luo began to laugh, saying that he didn't think the doppelgangers could be joking, and the Destroyer began to get angry, asking if he was laughing at him. Smiling, Luo said that it seemed that he had planned to guard the master before and not react to any provocations, and wanted to trap and kill Luo. The Destroyer said that he would not have thought that the boy was so perceptive and would bite through his plan. He explained with a smile that the Destroyer was SS level, and his doppelganger was only S, so it would be very unwise to engage him in battle. But the next moment, he activated instant fusion to gain more power from his doubles, the Dark Emperor and Kaguya. After the fusion, Kaguya X Dark Emperor with level S appeared, absorbing all the abilities of the other doppelganger. Looking at the girl's back, he thought that the Dark Emperor's armor made up for her fragility, and now she charged with her sword, trying to break through the Destroyer's defenses to get to him. He began to create an ice dome around himself when he realized that his abilities no longer prevailed over the opponent. He began to create an ice coffin around so that everyone would be swallowed by a solid wall of ice. Kaguya was standing on top of the coffin until it closed and she fell into it. She sent an arrow down, asking if that was all he was capable of. The doppelganger screamed that the girl wouldn't dare and that he wouldn't let her surpass him. Kaguya replied calmly, looking at her opponent, that it was just frostbite to her when he asked if she didn't hurt at all from all his ice attacks. She brought the sword over her head, saying that her sword was much more dangerous. He began to create an ice wall, ice ring, and ice rain. The Destroyer tried to do everything he could so that the girl did not reach him. The girl said that she could reduce his attack speed because she had a cool wind when her sword was already at the doppelganger's throat. But he was sure that she would not defeat him. Sensing the Dark Emperor behind her, the girl activated the Force of Liberation. The Emperor's armor was destroyed, and the host's health automatically improved and regenerated. But while the Destroyer fought off her attacks, the girl activated Night Rain. Squinting at the Destroyer's remains, she said that she would protect her master, as she was Princess Kaguya. Now the girl stood with her sword drawn in front of Khan, who was sleeping peacefully. The girl told the master that she had completed the task, and the Dark Emperor said that he, in general, was also there and made his contribution. The boy praised the doppelgangers, saying that they were well done and now they could rest, and he takes everything else upon himself. After activating the robbery, he could directly feel his S-level ability awakening within him, and that his fighting ability had greatly improved. The boy, after reading the information about the ability, realized that the personal mask only activates when he is in danger. Not fully believing in this, the boy summoned the doppelganger he now possessed, the patron god. The doppelgangers watched as Lin Luo fought and threw tantrums, because the doppelganger he had received could not be summoned while the others were summoned. Ta Luo quickly came to his senses and said that he understood everything. Turning back to Kaguya, he told her to hit him on the neck. The girl did not understand what he was saying, frightened by his question. He said that in order to summon his doppelganger, he would have to be in mortal danger, so he told her to hit him sooner. Taking out her sword, the princess said that she would do it for her master. He lowered himself so that his neck was exposed, and the girl brought the sword very close. The boy looked in surprise at Kaguya, who was still holding the sword at his neck, and asked why the doppelganger had not appeared. Lao Chi told the master that the doppelganger must not have sensed that he was in real danger, and therefore did not appear. After all, Kaguya did not try to kill him and had no intention. Refusing to help Kaguya, the boy called out to the Dark Emperor with a smile, ordering him to attack him and beat him as hard as he wanted. The Dark Emperor said he was obeying the order and raised his fist in his master's direction to carry out the order. Suddenly the boy looked around in surprise, seeing that time around him had stopped, and all the doppelgangers had stopped moving. Luo heard a voice saying that he had no willpower in his heart and wanted to walk a dozen paths. He said that his righteousness was worth nothing, so that he would allow him to show that he would do anything for him. A doppelganger appeared, telling Lin Luo to hide everything in his heart: ambition, anger, and longing for the future. He said that the boy no longer needed it. With his name on his lips, he proposed to destroy the whole world. Trying to reach out, he summoned the doppelganger, ordering it to come out. Before him now stood the savior in a mask, showing his true face. He stood in a classical costume and with wings, in a mask, and said that just one word of the master, and he would send the opponent to hell. The Dark Emperor said that the savior was very funny, and said that they should see which of them will go to hell first. But the fight was stopped by Lin Luo, who ordered both of them to stop and stop right now. The boy was displeased, asking at what point they could do something without her knowledge. They both stood and apologized. The Dark Emperor hesitated, and the savior said that he was ready for orders. Luo thought that his new SS-level doppelganger had excellent manners and was his first doppelganger to be so well-mannered. He thought it was a good thing that this one wasn't as evil as the demon. The boy was very pleased, smiling, when he learned the savior's abilities, as he could save lives and had ranged combat skills. He is better than the destroyer. He asked the savior what the clause patron of 23% reincarnation means. He replied that it was because of the danger and that 23% of the total force would be needed for defense. Xiao Mei defiantly asked if he was really saying that he could block the Dark Emperor's Iron Profound with only 23% power. The savior snorted, saying that he did not want to spend even 1% on that. The Dark Emperor told the newcomer that he was looking down on him and to come and tell him so to his face. When they started to argue again, Lin Luo put his hand to his head, because it was about to explode, and ordered it to stop. He began to order Xiao Mei to stop pitting them against each other, and then she rushed at Kaguya, telling her that her master had punched her in the face, while Kaguya's eyes widened in surprise. The boy stood in the middle of the chaos of his doppelgangers and watched who was doing what and what a mess they were making. He realized that there are too many doppelgangers in his team, and therefore it is quite difficult to manage them. He told them to listen carefully. He ordered everyone to obey the prayer master's orders if Ling Luo himself was temporarily out of order. Lao Chi blushed slightly as he smiled and asked if the master was serious. The three doubles say that they will obey Lao Chi without any problems. But the savior turned his head, questioning what he was saying. Meanwhile, a group of 5 people were moving on the ground, and one of them was asking why the other was asking for a transfer, since they had only been working together for 5 days. The monk said that they had agreed that Lao Yu would get 40%, he would get 30%, and the others would get 10%, and asked one of them if he had decided to spread his wings. Keitaro said that Liu used to be strong, but they had all grown up, and that it was very wise to rely on their abilities and speculate on their own profits. They began to fight, and Keitaro told them to be more careful, because they were not his subordinates. Lao Yu said enough of the bickering. Behind him was his doppelganger, watching them both. He said that from this day on, apart from joint affairs, everyone should be on their own. They all asked in surprise if he wanted them to distribute the resources they would mine. He talked about the 12 remaining dungeons. He said that he and Keitaro each have 2 dungeons, the others have 1, and then they will divide another 4 between them. The monk asked what would happen if he needed a guide to a secret kingdom. But then they began to discuss Lao Yu's plan, and the monk thought that if they argued any more, Lao would once again be in charge and get everything. The other three, with Keitaro as the lead, said they agreed to the terms. Keitaro turned to Yu and told him to be careful because they were going first. He asked his doppelganger which of these people could be a dragon or a phoenix, and if they would agree to cooperate with each other. And he said that he probably needs to improve his abilities and then look for them. Turning back to the girl, he said that now they needed to find their teammates and hope that they would remember the rules of the game. Lin Luo mentioned that there was a dungeon somewhere here that could absorb energy, and the level was similar to the Sacred Land. He looked at the information in front of him and realized that he had found a name, Weeping Grave. He understood that he had never been to such dungeons before, but he was a bit confused about the tasks at this level, but it was not that important. The boy was satisfied, because he could cope with anything unexpected that would wait for him there. They all entered the dungeon and went on, looking for the first task. Xiao Mei threw herself into his arms and said that it was very cold here. He asked the doppelgangers how they were while they just stood aside and showed no signs of coldness. And even though it wasn't cold, Lin Luo still gave the girls warm clothes so they wouldn't die. Now they were in warm coats and hats. Lao Qi told his master that he saw no signs of a fight and that no one was here. But the very next moment, he said that someone was approaching them, so they rallied and waited for the appearance of the unknown. He ordered the Dark Emperor to stop those people while Lin Luo increased the strength of their team. The Master of Prayers was ready to grant wishes by opening the book and waiting for the Master's order. Lin stood in front of the Wheel of Fortune, waiting for it to spin. When the near-impossible crystal fell, Lin hugged Lao Qi, saying he was incredibly cool, and Lao Qi said it was an honor to serve Lin Luo. He watched, thinking that it was good that the results of the draws were good because he would be scolded again. The boy had used a crystal that was able to fuse A-level and S-level doppelgangers, which was exactly what he needed this time. And he also decided to give the Ascension Crystal to his brother, who would need it to obtain certain abilities. The Dark Emperor ran to attack, following the Master's order. Halfway there, he was caught by the rays of power that the crystals, crushed by the Master, gave him. Players will have to help the legion that came to these lands for research, and Law mentioned the best strategy that helped them win the most. When they win, they can get the Second Legion of the Temple award. After thinking for a while, the boy smiled because he found a slightly dangerous but very profitable strategy. He ordered Kaguya to help the Dark Emperor, and after they defeated those enemies, they would fight in battle together. And then, taking out his blade, he ordered the Dark Emperor to immediately engage in battle. Someone watched them, saying to themselves that these young people sure knew how to surprise. The man said he could see them running away before the hate arrived. The girl said that only one of them was human, and he had already summoned heroic souls. Staring at Ling Luo in the orb, she said that she would never have thought that divine fate would appear. The Second Army, led by Reinhardt, marched into the Canyon of Oblivion in the cold winter. Reinhardt said that today they have to destroy the representatives of the witch cult. The warriors shouted in support of their commander's decision. Suddenly, Reinhardt saw two figures in the middle of the canyon approaching the army. Lin Luo and Kaguya, who approached the army, reported that they had information about the soldiers ahead. Reinhardt was surprised by Ling Luo's act like this and admired his heroic spirit, as it was the first time he had met such a warrior. The commander of the Second Army asked for information and promised to give a reward for it. Lin Luo said that his maid had learned the information and she would tell about it herself, and the maid turned out to be Kaguya. She was in no hurry to tell the information and looked intently at the commander. The commander began to get nervous and demanded to tell everything that the girl knew. Kaguya drew her sword, and her force knocked the commander back along with his horse. Reinhardt did not understand who these two were and tried to protect himself from the power of his rival. The force began to act on the commander, and he could not do anything and did not understand what was happening. Kaguya, in Dark Emperor form, used a devastating and wild blade against Reinhardt, earning 2410 morale points, a new battle skill, and taking the initiative in battle. Reinhardt couldn't understand why his power was draining so quickly and what was wrong with his opponent's blade. The commander saw the image of Lao Zi behind Ling Luo and realized that he was the one trying to take away the power and humiliate Reinhardt in front of the entire army. The commander of the Second Army felt how strong the spirit of the opponents was, but he was certain that Lao Tzu would not be able to use his skills for long and should just hold on until the strength of the opponent ran out. The soldiers, seeing that the captain was fighting alone, hurried to protect him. But Lin Luo used the power of 1,000 swift wind swords to repel the army's attack. Reinhardt didn't give up and tried to fight Kaguya, remembering that 3 minutes had passed and Lin Luo's power no longer affected him. Noticing Lin Luo, the commander challenged him to fight one-on-one. Lin Luo accepted the challenge and was fully prepared to fight. The commander was surprised by such confidence of his opponent and did not understand what was happening. He didn't even want to think about what Lin Luo was up to, but just tried to destroy him. Lin Luo called out to his patron for help, and a figure appeared behind him. The commander was surprised because he did not know that a person could enter into a contract with several doubles. Lin Luo informed the commander that he would not be able to use his powers for the next second. The patron ordered the commander to disappear. Reinhardt did not understand what was happening, but a cloud of blue smoke began to envelop him. He realized that he was being sucked into a new world, but he could not resist the blue smoke. He completely disappeared, leaving behind only his equipment. The man was sitting over his magic ball and could not understand if there were really any people on their side. He hoped that someone came to help. The lady stood behind the man and expressed the opinion that it was a witch cult that decided to help. The man laughed and said that everything was arranged and they would be able to clean the bones of these heroes with peace of mind because the ashes of the dead are very important. The lady agreed with the man but confirmed that the leader had died and they needed to entertain the guests. The soldiers decided to take revenge for their commander and went on the attack. Kaguya destroyed the army by using the Sword of Rain because the safety of the master is under her protection. Lin Luo asked Kaguya to return, while he himself began to think about what killing the NPC player had given them. However, a figure appeared from under the ground in front of them and invited them to the Tomb of Spirits, mistaking Lin Luo for the messenger of the witch cult. At first, Lin Luo did not understand what was happening and began to remember or read about this operation, but after being confident in his abilities, he agreed to go. As he descended into the dungeon, Lin Luo thought about what rewards this would bring him, and when he saw a group of female mages, he immediately began planning his attack. The lady spoke first, thanking for the help and asking for instructions. Lin Luo did not understand what was happening at all, but he decided to play along and tried not to give away the fact that he did not understand anything at all. The man said that after 10 days of all the rituals, they still managed to complete the development of the Frost Dragon. Lin Luo was not confused and asked to show him the Frost Dragon. The lady agreed and led her guests into the dungeon. It was there that Lin Luo was able to see the real Frost Dragon. Lin Luo began to think about what the dragon spirit could give, and then asked how much more time was needed to refine the ice dragon. According to the man, it is thanks to Lin Luo that they will finally be able to pump the dragon and not be afraid of the arrival of the Second Legion. Hearing this information, Lin Luo immediately thought that the dragon would need to be taken away in time, and then asked for the ashes of the dead to restore energy. The man said that the ashes of the dead is an important material for the dragon, and there is not much of it left. When Lin Luo became indignant, the man still ordered to bring him the ashes of the dead, so that he could regain his strength. After receiving the ashes of the dead, Lin Luo felt how useful it was and asked to use the ashes, but the lady replied that it could slow down the dragon's cultivation. But the lady's refusal did not stop Lin Luo, and he promised to improve the ashes of the dead and continue the task. After another refusal, a figure appeared behind Lin Luo, and now he was already angry because his orders were not being followed. The man offered to stop arguing and let the messenger refine the ashes. The lady stood and watched Lin Luo trying to figure out what was wrong. The lady summoned the shadow to thank for the help and tell about the possibility of continuing the ritual. However, the shadow did not understand what kind of help was in question. And when the lady showed Lin Luo, it turned out that he was not a member of the witch cult. The lady was surprised and decided to kill the messenger, but the shadow ordered to invite him to the cult of witches and give him as much ash of the dead as he needed. Lin Luo controlled how he was given the ashes of the dead and thought that very soon he would receive energy freedom. When the lady returned, Lin Luo asked her where she had been, but the lady decided to ask first who the messenger was and why he had come to them. Lin Luo was surprised because they were the ones who invited him here. Realizing her mistake, the lady apologized and said that she had succumbed to the Wish Witch, and her name was Bride Lee, and then asked the name of the messenger. Lin Luo recommended himself as the Dark Emperor. Bride Li was surprised because she had never heard of the Dark Emperor, but she offered him to join the cult, promising the ashes of the dead. Ling Luo was stunned by such a proposal and did not understand what was going on at all, but he said that he might join the witch cult in exchange for the ashes of the dead. Bride Li asked for time to think, but she informed that very soon the Empire will send their soldiers to them, and they should refine the dragon as soon as possible, because those soldiers have the third level of power. Realizing that it was impossible to deceive Bride Li, Ling Luo agreed to join the witch cult. But at the same second, Lin Luo kills Bride Li with his blade, having received a new combat attribute, a sword that eats flames. As soon as everyone saw that Ling Luo had killed Bride Li, he immediately ordered the Dark Emperor and Kaguya to kill everyone. As soon as everyone started to run away, Ling Luo's body was engulfed by the voice of death, which was released by one of the members of the witch cult. However, Lin Luo broke free from this shackle and pushed the boy aside. But at the same second, the man decided to summon an ice dragon, even though Ling Luo was sure that this man was just a carrier of information. The man ordered the ice dragon to kill Ling Luo. Ling Luo was very surprised because the man had awakened the ice dragon before the right time. After seeing the ice dragon, Lin Luo realized that he had not improved enough and that there was a possibility to defeat him if he used the Monster Lord. Lin Luo ordered Kaguya to kill the spellcaster and the Dark Emperor would attack the dragon with him. With the power of the Great Wind Call, Ling Luo used it against the ice dragon, driving the blade right into its head. Ling Luo used 10,000 swords, sword chi, fire-eating sword, and the deadly light of destruction against the dragon. After receiving an order from Lan Luo, Kaguya charged into the battle to prevent the spellcaster from resting and thrust a strong wind blade into him. And then they all started to attack the dragon by using Thousand Sword Dance and Night Wind Blade. The dragon was killed, and Lin Luo gained extra points which he used to improve his agility, the 10,000 Swords ability. For killing the ice dragon, Lin Luo was rewarded with a diamond-level sword. Lin Luo understood well that the sword not only increases the attack power, but also increases all the additional skills and is the best weapon at the moment. The sword wasn't the only reward, though. The rewards included a skeleton, dragon horn, and blood, as well as lots of ammo and coins. After all the rewards were received, Lin Luo, Kaguya, and the Dark Emperor moved on. Mr. Liu also made it to the secret dungeon to improve his health, but was angered that the Dark Emperor was faster. People sat on the floor while soldiers held the door at gunpoint. Let's go back a few days when Guo Tao received the future diary. However, as soon as Guo Tao opened the future diary, awakening the ability to simulate the future, he learned of his death. He was angry because he did not want to die at all, but then, taking control of himself, he decided to change the future. With access to the diary of the future, Guo Tao tried to find a way out of the situation and stay alive, but in each scenario he died. Every new scenario for Guo Tao ended in his death, no matter how hard he tried to change something or escape. While trying to hide in the police station, Guo Tao saw large beetles begin to fly into the premises and drive people away with their presence. Guo Tao ran outside with everyone and realized that everything had started because he saw two familiar shadows again. Ling Luo and Lao Zi watched what was happening and waited for their target to appear on the street, and as soon as they saw Guo Tao, they immediately stopped the bugs. Guo Tao tried to hide in the alley, but he was unable to do so. Guo Tao told Ling Luo about his diary and the gift of foresight, thus explaining how he knew of their arrival. Despite Guo Tao's plea to die at Kaguya's hands, it was the Dark Emperor who killed him, and Lin Luo chose to resist the ability. Summoning a new doppelganger, Ling Luo decided to take away Guo Tao's ability to predict the future as well. Thanks to the future diary, Ling Luo learned his future and realized that he would die the very next day. Such a prediction frightened Ling Luo, but he tried to calm himself down and find a way out of the situation by changing the future. Ling Luo summoned Lao Qi and they decided to look at an alternate future. Realizing that with the appearance of one doppelganger the future changes, Ling Luo decided to listen to Lao Qi's words and summon all the doppelgangers. After summoning the succubus queen and the green demon, Lin Luo was certain that the future diary would now be able to provide different information. However, even this did not help, and the future diary still informed Ling Luo of his future death. Ling Luo tried time and time again to find a way out of the situation and do his best not to die. which is why he turned to Lao Chi to learn what strategy to use. Lao Chi still found a way to change the future and suggested using the ability Unborn Moving Fetus. Judging by the entry in the future diary, this is indeed a necessary method, but it is not known exactly which emotion should be selected for this ability. Turning to Lao Chi for help again, Ling Luo didn't expect to hear that such a request would take all of the prayer master's energy. Lin Luo wasn't ready to sacrifice Lao Chi yet, so he decided to first return the Ascension Crystal to his brother and raise his ability level. Large bugs began to attack the premises, and people tried to shoot them back. However, they had a bad time, and one of the beetles flew straight at the guards, who were already expecting their death. Lin Luo and the Dark Emperor arrived in time and saved the guards, so they let him inside to meet his brother. During Lin Luo's meeting with his brother, he said that he will soon be released from prison and will be able to respond to all those who insult his brother. Lin Luo said that he brought his brother a gift that would allow him to get out of prison very quickly. The Dark Emperor was able to deliver the gift to Lin Luo's brother. The prison guards were very concerned about such an act, but Lin Luo assured that there had been no wrongdoing. At this time, the gift began to take effect, and Brother Lin Luo's abilities rose to the S level. During this period, the Knight of the Red Lotus appeared, who became the twin of Lin Luo's brother. Lin Luo's decision worried his brother, but Lin Luo assured him that he could fend for himself and that this double would help his brother to survive his stay in prison more easily. During this period, a man was watching his brother using cameras who was very interested in Lin Luo's ability. While the brothers were talking to each other, a guard came and told them that the warden was waiting for Ling Luo. Ling Luo was happy that his plan had worked and arrived at the prison warden. Ling Luo knew that the boss would now try to raise his level as well, but he listened carefully. The head of the prison informed that Lin Luo's brother was used, and he was not guilty at all. So Lin Luo asked Duan to tell the truth in exchange for destroying the monsters. Duan simply said that there was no need to destroy the monsters and hinted at the Ascension Crystal. Ling Luo protested that the information was not worth such a price, since he would know it anyway, but the boss did not back down and offered to reduce the punishment for Ling Luo's brother. Under pressure, Duan revealed that Ling Luo was framed by the Wang group, and the police could do nothing because all the evidence pointed to him. Ling Luo wanted to take revenge, but Duan said that it was not possible even if he awakened all the abilities of the S-class, because the Wang group was the strongest. But Duan offered Ling Luo the opportunity to reduce his brother's term. He just had to agree to the terms.